This podcast is for educational entertainment purposes only.
I have a client. She actually had breast cancer, and that's what they prescribed her. She's been on THC. The cancer's gone, and that is insane because I had my father died of cancer. My mom is dying of cancer right now. My grandmother died of cancer. I've had a lot of people around me die of cancer, and they were never given the treatment like that. It was always chemotherapy, radiation, these harsh drugs. And here we are. My friend Inez, she has breast cancer, and they gave her what would be considered like an alternative treatment, and it worked, and there was no side effects, and she's not ill, and she's fine. I may do for like 3 days, I may do one strain. So by switching the strains consistently, you don't build up a tolerance. It's the same thing like rotating steroids. Like, again, I'm applying everything I learned with steroids to cannabis.
This podcast is for educational entertainment purposes only. This is not medical, legal, or any other type of advice. Don't do anything what we do without doctor supervision. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of MC Stories podcast by Marcikron. And on this episode, I have a very special guest. He's in the podcast for the second time, and it's Jerry Ward. You probably all know him. He has a YouTube channel that's legendary. He made videos for I don't know how many years. How many years it's Jerry that you made?
Started in 2010, so I have something like 3,000 or 4,000 videos up there. We've had 59 million views so far on the channel.
It's crazy. I think like everyone in the bodybuilding scene knows Jerry's channel. Even people from Czech and Slovakia, they know your channel because it's not just in America but worldwide. It's probably the one of the most famous channels. So, and a lot of great information there as well. So thanks for doing what you do and inspiring a lot of people. And I just want to tell you that if you listen to this podcast, you can listen to it on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Podcast Addict, Pocket Cast, Breaker, and Radio Public. And you can also support the podcast on Patreon. And right now I'm going to give the space to Jerry. And Jerry, you can tell us what's new with you, what's some new information, and how's your life going on right now?
Well, I mean, first of all, thanks for having me on again, Mario. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate that you're here again. Like, it means really a lot to me to have someone like you I can discuss topics about and talk to, because I really appreciate your time, knowing how busy you are.
Well, I had a great time the first time, and I think that's important to get, like you were talking about, like in Slovakia where you were at, to get messages across to everybody. You know what I mean? Sometimes we think we're very alone. We think we're very individual, and then all of a sudden you see somebody that kind of thinks like you, or they're saying the things that are going on in your life, and you realize how similar we are across the world, as everybody. For me right now, I'm still in Fairfax, Virginia, and life is getting back to normal. After the restrictions that we had, after the lockdowns and all the craziness that went on into 2020, things are, kind of back to normal here. You don't have to wear the masks if you don't want to here. If you want to, you can wear them. They're not forcing the vaccines in my state yet. I'm sure like most places they will, but pretty much everything is open. Like we went to a WWE event, recently. My wife and I went out to the Olympia a couple of weeks ago. So things are getting to where we're actually getting back out again and traveling. I've been traveling with the NPC. I'm also an NPC and an IFBB judge. So I judge the competitions. I've judged this year so far, since June, I've judged 14 competitions. Before that, I went out to Mexico to judge. I was a head judge in Mexico at the in Leon, Mexico for the Lionheart Classic. And I judged about 5 or 6 shows before then. So I've judged close to 20 shows this year, and I've traveled all over the place, whether it's Florida, Pennsylvania, all over Maryland, DC, Virginia. So like traveling is happening again. I'm staying in hotels again, which is kind of normal, and I'm getting on flights again. So in general, things are just starting to get back to normal, but they're very busy. Like people just want to get their lives back in order. And, the competitors in bodybuilding, they never stopped. They never missed a beat. Like we had a seminar right when we opened the country up, and we had like 100 people show up to the seminar. It was unbelievable how many people showed up. And not only did they show up, they showed up in shape, which means 4 months we were locked down here in our state, and no gyms were open, and a lot of people got out of shape, and a lot of people ate bad food. And these competitors, they were sneaking into gyms, they were building gyms at their houses. They had nothing to do except sleep, eat, train, and repeat. Right. So their physiques got better, almost like the camel crew out in Kuwait. Like all these people did was train and eat, and they had nothing else to do. And they came back and their physiques looked phenomenal. So last year, when we opened back up again, we had the best year we had quality wise for bodybuilding and all the other divisions that we'd had in a long time. It was pretty amazing. And this year it continues to go in that direction. The classes are even bigger. We did the North Americans this year in Pittsburgh, which 1,700 competitors, took us 5 days to do the competition. So, I mean, with that tells you that things are getting back to normal and people want to get out there and compete. They're not really scared anymore of what was going on, originally when we had this lockdown start. That's where we're at right now. So I'm happy to be where I'm at. I'm blessed to have GIFD Labs, which we made it through the pandemic. A lot of businesses didn't. We did. We lost a lot of business, of course, and most people did, but we're here. Business is picking up. We got some new products going, and overall things are just going good. Finally, things are just going good.
Good to hear that. Good to hear that. I'm glad that everything's going fine. And I just want to mention, you mentioned that the competitors look great despite the lockdowns. And I just want to give a shout out to one of my athletes, Luboš Hladek. Maybe some of people from even your fans might know him because he got something from Generation Iron in 2019, and he was mentioned as the most ripped bodybuilder ever.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe like the bodybuilder of the year, because he really gets like 2 or 3% body fat, like really, really shredded. And he can make such conditioning that he has like some damaged tissue in his quads and stuff. And you can see it like a couple of weeks from the show, how shredded he is, because the skin is so thin. So he's like, he last competed in 2019, and then the COVID came. And he had like hernia surgery, and it was right around the time when COVID came. So he recovered for a couple months, didn't train at all, and then he made his own gym in his house, and now he's training 2 times a day. Actually, he's right now 2 weeks out of the competition, and he made 10 kilos progress, and has even a better shape than he had before. So.
Well, his body had that rest, so it's able to get fresh.
And he was training at home. He didn't want to any gym. He went to gym maybe twice in those 2 years. So it's crazy.
Yeah, well, interesting enough, like if the gym is home, it saves you a lot of time. So if you have the right equipment at your house, you're going to be able to train like he's training twice a day. And somebody that doesn't have a gym at their house, they have to drive to the gym, drive back home. Maybe they hang out at the gym all day. I don't know. Or drive back to the gym at night. And that can be, tough. That can wear on you for contest prep or something like that, or off season or whatever. So if you have the home gym, like I have plenty of friends that have home gyms, and they're not going back to the gym. They may go back to the gym if they need a certain piece of equipment for legs or something like that. Maybe 1 day a week they go in and do legs because they want a certain, we have these different assault machines and the pendulum squats and stuff like that we have now. But other than that, there's a lot of people training at home still. Yeah, we've seen it a lot.
I know it's actually crazy that even like his routine is better because as he has the gym in his home, he doesn't have to travel, like you said, and he trains 2 times a day because it isn't a problem to go to the gym, twice a day if you have it at home. And he, in his off season, he trained like, I think 30 minutes, because I trained a couple times with him, 30 minutes, then like 20 minutes of cardio. He ate, and then the second training as well, some cardio. So his, his stomach is like, he can eat more food and stuff. And that's where the progress came, even tried like some different training methods, like rest balls and stuff, and made 10 kilos progress, which is like at his weight, it's crazy to make 10 kilos progress. So and we make fun of him, like he's autistic. He has autism because he eats like every 2 hours, literally, and he eats the same food every day. And the difference between his off season and his diet is that he just has less amounts, but the same food as well. So he doesn't change any food. And I
A
think
lot of top
that's
guys do
like
that.
secret to his conditioning is because his body isn't in any stress, because his body knows which food he is going to have and at which time.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of pros, and myself included. There was times that I ate the same foods every day. It was like the same 4 or 5 foods, and it didn't change. And your body becomes very predictable. Like you know what's going to happen to your body when you eat those foods. Now, the whole goal is to find the foods that don't affect your body in a negative way, right? So there are some people, like for me, sweet potatoes or yams, I don't digest them well, but rice digests really well for me. So I can have rice at every meal. Well, once you find that food, like you're saying, he's eating the same foods, he's found foods that work with his body. And if he just sticks with those foods, his body's going to respond the same way over and over and over again. They're going to digest well. If they digest well, his body's going to repair itself faster. If it repairs itself faster, he's going to grow. He's going to recover and grow. So by putting that stuff in his body consistently, it's almost like I kind of liken it to like when you go to the doctor and you're sick, they don't give you like a ton of medication. They put an IV in your arm. That IV slowly drips the medication into you. Well, he's slowly dripping the food every couple of hours, and it's that same food that he's putting in. It's like literally having an IV full of food around the clock as he's doing that, and the body's utilizing it well. So he's at a good place right now by doing that. And you can make your body predictable. You know that when I have this meal, it's going to take probably this long to digest because I'm going to be hungry this much time afterwards. And then I have this much time to my next meal. And your body becomes like, it's like very predictable, like clockwork. Well, when you're getting ready for the competition that last week, that's really great to have because there's no
Yeah.
chances you take. You just do the same things that you were doing using the same foods. Maybe you increase the carbohydrates a little bit. Maybe you pull your water at the end, but there's no crazy things that you have to do trying to figure out what's going on. And if you throw some foods in that you haven't had for a while, they mess up your stomach. So then you don't digest them well. The body retains water. So as long as he's doing that, he's going to have the same exact result over and over again, which is very consistent look all the time.
Yeah, that's like exactly like you said. That's the key. I wanted to show you like how he looks. Some real quick picture. This was 4 weeks out, and I don't know if you can see the
I
conditioning.
can't see it. You got to pull it back. It's hard to see. I can see where his glutes are, which everything else is washed out, but his glutes are shredded. Hamstrings and glutes are shredded.
I'm going to try to like.
Yeah, he's tight. His lower back, he's shredded. What does he weigh? Do you know what he weighs?
100 kilos, which is like
220 around there.
220 pounds. No, that's too much.
Yeah, 222 pounds. Yeah, he's
205 pounds, 210 pounds, maybe.
So anything over 198 is a heavyweight. So he's a heavyweight. He's a solid heavyweight, shredded heavyweight.
Here's like video. Maybe this will be a little bit better, but his conditioning is like crazy. It's going to show the glutes.
So I noticed he wears one of those waist trainers. Is that common out there where you guys are at?
Well, actually, yeah, but more like in physique categories, not in bodybuilding. But actually, a lot of physique athletes wear it.
So there's guys like Kai Green in them that actually use them now also to try to bring their stomachs in, and it works. We're seeing it. It's really common here now. Like you said, all the physique guys here. Yeah, this dude's shredded. What competition is he doing?
He's in PCA. He's professional in PCA.
PCA, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of blurry now. It's out of focus, but yeah, no, he's shredded. He looks great.
Yeah, I'm going to send you the profile after we record, but he's pretty dangerous guy. And actually, in the PCA, he beat, I think, even Peter Molnar, which is like.
I know who he is. He's super
he was in NPC as well for a lot of years.
Yeah, I remember Peter.
So he beat him as well.
Hard leg too. Yeah.
And he was like, I think at the time when he beat him, he was like 10 or 15 kilos heavier. So that's like where the conditioning, beats the
conditioning
size.
Can beat size. Yeah, I mean, not everybody's like Big Ramy where you have conditioning and size. Conditioning can beat a lot of big guys.
Yeah, and Ramy this year, I was pretty shocked. He looked really good, and especially the side poses. That was like crazy.
I think he wasn't as good as he was last year. He's just got so much muscle on his legs that once he's lean, it just like hangs off his body. Like he looks like a Belgian blue ox, those cows that have myostatin deficiency. He looks like that. He looks like he has muscle in places people don't even have places. He's just a very large individual. And, it's interesting because his frame is very large too to carry that much muscle. But like I've met Ramy a bunch of times and his wrists are about the size of mine. They're small. Like I can put my fingers all the way around my wrist. He doesn't have like large joints. like thick joints. He has small joints, but a wide, thick frame. So he carries so much muscle and it doesn't look all bunched up and he doesn't look all weird. It actually gives him like better symmetry than somebody else that would be like a similar body weight, you know?
And good thing that you mentioned this. I wanted to ask you, you were at the Olympia, but were you at the stage like on semifinals and finals?
No, so they had the prejudging, which we saw the prejudging that was at um the event itself, the expo.
Yeah.
So we were at the expo, and then later on they had finals at another venue that was over there. So we just saw the ones that were at the expo itself. We didn't go to the venue itself.
But like, I don't really like to judge competitions from like pictures and videos, because I myself visited many competitions, and a lot of times, like, even I film competitions as well, and on video it's totally different than in
Yeah,
person, and
it's very different.
it's really hard to judge. But
It
like,
is.
I think that Hadi may be second. I think no one
Yeah.
would be pissed if you would get second place. What do you think
Well,
of
the thing
it?
with Hadi is, and I spoke to the judges because the judges are actually my friends, and I spoke to them and said, what do you think? And Hadi, he has his size, but he's not big like Brandon and he's big like Rami, right? He doesn't have that size,
Yeah,
and he's hard, right? He's striated, but the density. So there's striations and there's density. It's actually two different looks. Striations are very much genetic. Density comes from training very heavy. Rami and Brandon have density, and he has striations. Now I can equate that to back in the day. There was a guy named Andreas Munzer from Germany.
yeah.
And Andreas was the most shredded guy you had ever seen, but he never placed top 10 because he didn't have the size, he didn't have the shape, and he didn't have any density. He was just super striated. Like, it was the separations of the muscles were there, but the muscle wasn't hard because it wasn't his training that was doing it, it was his genetics. And that's where Hadi's at. Like, he doesn't have a good frame. His frame is not as balanced as the other guys, doesn't have the round look, doesn't have the density. And I think the judges actually knock him. There are lumps in his shoulders. Now, I don't know what is in his shoulders, but those lumps are going to hold him back. Like, I've discussed this with many people in the NPC, and they don't want to see these lumps. And I don't know whether it's synthol use or site injections or whatever they're doing. But when you're on that level at the Olympia level, and I mean, that's the best in the world, the elite and the best in the world, you shouldn't be seeing signs of drug use when you're on the stage. And if he shows up with that, they're going to knock him for it. I mean, it's just how it is. Like, you know, even at a local show, if we see somebody with lumps all over him, they're not going to beat a better bodybuilder. You know, they're not going to be the better bodybuilder, even if they're more shredded or bigger with these lumps. It's just, you're not supposed to have these lumps, right? We're supposed to be judging actual muscle and not oil that's filled. Now, I do believe a lot of the guys use the oil. I do believe that probably the whole top 10 probably use the oil in the Olympia, but you can't see it. Like, we don't know. It's not so apparent. It's just, you know, whatever they're doing, I don't really know. But you can just tell that, you know, some of the guys have these body parts that are so swollen and so round that you're looking at it going like, it can't be real muscle, but there's no lumps. It still has striations. It's in proportion with everything else. Could it be genetic? It could be, but I think a lot of the guys are using it and you can't see it. So if you get on that level and you can see those things like that, I mean, Iris Kyle is a perfect example. She's a former Miss Olympia. She won the thing like a million times. And they placed her in like a low placing one year because she had giant lumps in her glutes from injections that she had put in her butt. Well, if you're at the Olympia level and you're a Miss Olympia, you should not have injection sites. And they knocked her for that. So unless Hadi stops doing whatever he's doing or gets that stuff out of there or whatever, I don't think he's going to place any higher than third. I think that's pretty much where he's going to live for a while.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I talk about, because on the internet and from the pictures, you really can see these details.
Yeah. It's
So,
when he does certain things, like when he puts his arm straight up like this, his delts do this really weird thing. So even on the internet, you can see it like that. When he's flexing and stuff, like the angles of the cameras, remember the judges are sitting right at their feet and they're looking up. These cameras are usually up level. So the judges are seeing something that the other people aren't. They're seeing a whole different view. I think, I don't know if you've ever, tried this before, but take a picture of like your friend that was just on the, you were showing me the video, right? Take a picture like this, and then literally put it on the floor and take a picture angled up and then look at the two. The one from the bottom is what the judges are looking at. The other one is what we see in magazines. It's a totally different look. So like you said, videos are hard to tell by because the video is usually shot straight on and not down looking up. So a lot of people, look at it from that angle and say, well, this person should have won, that person should have won. And I completely understand, because back in the day before I was a judge, I didn't understand that. It wasn't until I first sat at the judging table when I looked up, I said, wow, everybody looks so different. Like, this is crazy. I had no idea. And, I wish I knew that when I was competing, because I would have been taking all my pictures from down low and then adjusting my physique based on what was down low and not like head level. Like, it makes a really big difference what the judges see compared to what we see normally.
Yeah. I exactly know what you're talking about. And you know what? I also want to discuss the shows. Here in Slovakia, you don't have NPC shows, but you have NPC shows in like Hungary, Czech Republic, and other countries that are like 200 or 300 kilometers away, which is pretty close. So a lot of Slovakian guys and all these guys from countries go there. And if you go to like the European IFBB show and like the NPC show, man, it's crazy. It's like if it would be like a little bit different, but it's like complete different sport.
Well, now what we're doing is what you're talking about is the NPC worldwide.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that wasn't here about 5 or 6 years ago. We didn't have that. We
yeah,
had,
right.
the IFBB amateur, which was, what
Yeah,
was happening. Now we have the NPC worldwide. We've branched it out. So what you're saying right now, I completely understand. Because we actually went to Mexico this year in March and did the Lionheart Classic in Leon, Mexico. And when we got there, as judges, we talked to all the competitors and explained to them that, we know normally you're posing as one hand on hip facing the front, one hand on hip at the back. It's not like that in the NPC. We have to teach them the NPC rules, right? Because posing is a little bit different. The criteria is a little bit different. And then how we run the shows is different, right? Everything from the setup of the stage and the lights and the backdrop to how it's run in the back to the judging, everything is different with the NPC. And we're starting to implement that all over the world now with the NPC worldwide. So you're going to see difference between this federation and the NPC. There's going to be a difference between the two. And the more that we go out to these different countries and the more that we put our standards in there, you're going to see more and more that it's very uniform across the NPC. Like if you compete in Slovakia or Germany or France or whatever in the NPC, you come to America, it's the exact same experience no matter where you go, right? We've streamlined it to make it like our specific way that we do things. And the one thing that we pride ourselves on, or we try to pride ourselves on, is being the best where the amateurs compete, trying to have the best amateurs, because the best amateurs will go on to be the pros, right? So we try to go out there and say, hey, we want all your best people. Come up here, get on stage, let's see what you got, and try to earn that IFBB Pro card.
but you know what I like the best about NPC? I was basically on Saturday, I was filming one of my athletes, Peter Zambiak. He was competing at NPC Fit Parade in Budapest. And I liked the physique categories because in like the European IFBB and also before the federation split it in 2017, I think it was. Well, before you had like physique guys and you was like, okay, this one is first, this one is second, this one is third. But actually the results were completely different. And people didn't understand why. And the judges were like, this one didn't pose as well. This one had too much muscle. This one was too striated. It doesn't look good for physique category. And you didn't know how to prepare, you didn't know
Right.
if you didn't came too much condition, because then they would tell like the striations and stuff. And in NPC and at this competition, it was like perfectly judged, because the best looking guy with the best shapes, with the roundest muscle and the best conditioning, he won. And the second guy as well, he was like the top 6 guys that I would like think that would be in like that order. They were, and at like European IFBB show, this would never happen. It's like
Yeah.
really only like guessing when you come to European IFBB
Okay.
competition at like physique categories. Bodybuilding is different,
Yeah.
but the physique categories, it's crazy to judge in this.
There's a very strict standard that we have for the criteria. And for physique specifically, physique was something that came about because there are guys that just can't put on the mass. They couldn't put on the muscle mass, and they couldn't compete, right? But they were really into the sport. They lived the lifestyle. So we came up with a physique division, which Gary Udick calls the home run division for guys. And it's probably, it's been our biggest division for a while. And now Classic is kind of trying to catch up to it a little bit. Classic physique is starting to get big here too. But the physique criteria is to have wide shoulders, good lats coming down to a small, tight waist, as small as you can possibly get, right? Flat stomach, ripped abs, serratus, intercostals, all that showing. From the back, crazy V taper, right? So we're looking at the silhouette, meaning we want that super V taper going from the shoulders into the back of the waist, right? And when they turn around to the front, you can use one hand on hip, two hands on hip, no hand on hip, whatever you feel like represents your body the best. to show us the taper and the muscularity and the shreds in between. And, you know, it has progressed to the point where the guys are a lot bigger now than they were 3 or 4 years ago. That's just the evolution of the sport. I mean, pretty much everything goes that way where, you know, whether it's bodybuilding, physique, classic, the guys get a little bit bigger every year, a little bit shredded, more shredded every year. And it kind of goes that way until we find where the criteria is enough. And we say, that's it, you know? So these guys now for physique, they look unbelievable. They look like small bodybuilders. Like they're completely put together, symmetry head to toe, you know, and I've seen guys that are crossover from physique to classic. They just take the trunks off and put the other trunks on and cross over. So, I mean, the physiques are kind of getting similar to it, but it's really more about, you know, not really about size in physique. It's about the physique. It's about the taper. It's about the overall look like that. When you get to classic, they have the height and weight. I think you guys call it classic bodybuilding. We call it classic physique. They have a height and weight class.
Yeah.
So what that does is stops the guys from getting too big where their stomachs distend and they start to use, you know, too much drugs or injections or whatever. They stop using a lot of stuff because they don't need to be that big to win. And it's based on conditioning and shape, like it used to be back in the 90s, 80s, 70s, et cetera, like that. Then we have the men's open class, which is still about mass, of course, like muscle wins. Muscle means something in that class, but also the conditioning means something too, and the hardness and the dryness and the density, and pretty much everything that's always made bodybuilding is still bodybuilding in the open class. And the 212 is just like the open, except for it's a 212 weight limit.
Yeah.
So you got guys that are enormous, you know, like at 212, you look at them, they're so packed with muscle that if that was Rami's frame, the guy would be 400 pounds. You know, that's how thick they are, you know, in that division. So the divisions have gone, you know, they've evolved into something that, you know, we never thought they would. And more we're seeing people just stepping up and working hard and, you know, finding a place for them to fit. You know, we used to just have bodybuilding. Now we have bodybuilding, classic physique, you know, we have 212. We have other places for people to go that genetically couldn't fit into open. Like there are people that will never be able to compete with Rami, and they should have a place to compete also. And that's what the NPC and the IFBB have done. They've created places for other people to compete that normally they wouldn't be able to compete.
Yeah. I want to stop at the posing, and I want to like get credit to NPC as well, because in this European IFBB, like if you have like not even like hand, but if you don't have like I don't know, 3 or 4 fingers, you have like 1 finger more, 1 finger less, you get points down for that even. And the posing criteria, it's like so strict that you can't really have your own style. You just have to pose like everyone else. And that's like kind of like looks like kind of limiting to me, you know.
Well, everybody's physique is different and their structures are different. So if you stand them all the same way, they're going to look different just based on each other's structures, right? So what we do is we allow them to twist a little bit more with their waist or pull up in the lats a little more, lean back. They can do things to where it makes them look more like, you know, it fits the criteria more for that person. Like there are guys that come out and they look good just standing there. And as soon as they pose, you're like, wow, because they know how to shift their hips, turn their hips a little bit, twist a little bit, and really, you know, really power that chest up and the shoulders out. And all of a sudden they look like they grow 30 pounds right in front of your eyes, just standing there, you know, whereas, you know, some of the other ones like I've seen in Europe where they just stand there with one hand on hip and they have to stand there facing the judges and then the back and then facing them again with one hand on hip. And maybe this guy's shoulders a little more narrow than this guy's. Well, with the one hand on hip, he's going to look narrow. If he took his hand and put it down, he could twist a little bit, he'd look wider, you know. So it allows the competitors to show their strengths and hide their weaknesses to do their best on stage.
Yeah, but it's like bodybuilding, you know.
Same thing, same concept. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Not everybody does the front double bicep the same way. Not everybody does the side chest the same way. You know, you got 5 bodybuilders, they could do it the same way. They could all do it different. You know, they're trying to show their strengths and hide their weaknesses, which is part of competition.
Yeah, and the European IFBB doesn't allow you this in physique category. That's what I don't like about it, you know.
I know the Arnold is like that too here in America, because one of my friends did the Arnold. He was like, I got to do a hand on hip. He's like, I never done a hand on hip. I said, what are you talking about? He said, it's the European criteria, because a lot of people from Europe were coming here to compete back then. They didn't have all the different Arnolds yet, you know, so they were
like Arnold Classic Europe?
Yeah, but it was here. It was Arnold Classic in Ohio here in America, because they didn't have the one in Europe yet when he was competing. And they were like, we're going to use the European rules, because there were so many more Europeans that were coming to compete than people in America at that time. But they said, we're just going to use the European rules. So they instated the rules. And I think they're still like that now, to be honest with you, for the amateurs anyways.
Interesting. And another thing I want to talk about is, like you mentioned, the opportunity for everyone to compete. And that's what I don't like here in like Slovakia and Czech Republic. People criticize categories like physique and bikinis, and they tell like, you know, a couple of years back, you had to have good genetics, you have to train hard, you had to have your cycle on point and stuff to be good and compete. And now everyone trains for like 1 or 2 years and he can go compete, and it's losing, the sport is losing its beauty. But I think exact opposite, you know, the
It
sport's
is.
growing bigger and bigger, and people here are like skeptic about these new categories and dislike it, you know. So I
Well, I
want to
mean,
know like how is this in America, like if people are supportive for it or if there are some critics as well.
well, I'll be honest with you, if it wasn't for these new divisions, there probably wouldn't be a bodybuilding in America. You know, bodybuilding itself has taken a hit. Like, you know, I judge all these shows and we see very, very few bodybuilders compared to what we did, you know, 20 years ago. And it's not specifically because, you know, the other categories are here. What's happening is the guys get so big and so ripped that not everybody can do that. You know, not everybody wants to do that. They don't want to be 300 pounds ripped. You know, some guys want to be just ripped for the beach and that's how they want to live their life. They don't want to be like that, you know. So we saw when physique started, physique is the biggest class when it started. It just destroyed bodybuilding. Like people were jumping into physique because they didn't want to have those the big stick physiques that they had in bodybuilding anymore. They wouldn't have to eat all that food and stress their body out and get injuries and take all the drugs. They wouldn't have to do that. They could tone it all down and still compete and be competitive. So we would have, you know, like what we'd do is we'd save bikini and bikini, which is women's division, and men's physique. They would have the most amount of people. We're talking 20, 30, 40 people in a class, in a single class. And there's 5 classes in a division. You'd have arenas full of people just for those divisions. Right. So yeah, you have the people that are like myself who are old school that are like, oh, you know, it's losing that hardcore, you know, feel to it because, you know, you add these other classes. Well, realistically, here in America, people are not really training hardcore anymore. You know, they're not, they're sticking cameras in their face during their workouts or making sure their outfits are right because they're going to put it on Instagram. Like, you know, just now people are starting to go back to the basics and training like Dorian and stuff here. Like they're having to get back to basics because the physiques got worse in bodybuilding because social media pretty much screwed it up, not the divisions. You know, social media, everybody's trying to film their workouts and take the right pictures. They're not concentrating on eating and training and doing the things to make their physique their best. You know, whereas, you know, the other divisions popped up and people gravitated towards those. They fill up those ranks so fast that that's the majority of competitors we have is physique and bikini. You know, now we have classic physique. There's a lot of guys wanting to move up from physique because, you know, bodybuilding was really big guys. Physique was really toned down guys. There were guys that were in between that were trying to go down and stay in the physique. Well, now classic physique allows them to stay here, right? So now when you go to the show, we have classes with 3 or 4 bodybuilders in it. We have 15 people in classic and then 30 in physique. So most of the show is made up of classic physique and physique now. It's not bodybuilding. So if you look at it like that, if we took physique and classic physique out, we only had, you know, 5 or 6 bodybuilders, we wouldn't even have a show, right? The show would be done in 10 minutes. Like we wouldn't even have to have it. You know, sometimes we have people that we don't even have people in the classes. You know, we'll have to combine middleweights and light heavies because, you know, one person showed up in this class and we have 3 in this one. We'll combine them so that we don't have one person standing on stage alone. But physique, we always have stacked stages. So it really is you know, it helped the sport evolve and grow into where, you know, when you go to the Olympia or the Arnold and the classic expos, when you go to those expos, yeah, it's got bodybuilding, but it's full of things other than the open bodybuilding, right? All these companies that are promoting supplements, most of them are hiring the physique guys, classic physique. It wasn't the big guys anymore, you know, because people getting involved in the sport, like when I first got involved in it, the big guys were there, but I was just trying to be like the small guys first, you know, so you're looking up to the small guys first, and then the big guys later on, once you get to be where the other guys are, right? So now what's happened is a lot of people getting involved because of physique, right? They'll go do physique first, and then they outgrow physique because they grow so much and they do have good genetics. Then they're in classic physique, right? And then you're seeing them get to the point where they've outgrown classic. Like we're looking at, you know, Chris Bumstead could probably jump in the open soon because he's outgrowing classic, right? So now we have people that have started the classic and then they make their way onto the open eventually, right? So I think it's actually, you know, these other divisions are feeding into the open because people start outgrowing them, but it gives the people a place to start. Or if they want to compete after training for 2 or 3 or 4 years, they can compete in physique. They don't have to wait 15 years until, you know, they're at this point. Now, a lot of people won't do it for 15 years to get to that point of the open class, right? If they had nothing to do, what are they going to do? Just keep training for 15 years and finally do a show? Now they go and they do a physique competition, right? And they get bit by the bug. Like, this is awesome. I love this. They go back to the drawing board. They put a little more muscle on. They come back and competing in physique again, right? So they may compete in physique for 3, 4, 5 years. Then their physique is getting to the point where, okay, I can move on to the classic physique now. Now they make the jump over to there, right? They never would have even made it to classic if physique wasn't there, because it just takes too long of just training, not getting on stage, not competing. It allows them to get involved in the actual sport itself earlier, which keeps them around a lot longer to make their way up to those classes. So I think, honestly, I think it was a brilliant idea. I think that we may see more classes added in the future. And I welcome that, because, this sport is bigger than it's ever been, right? I mean, think about how big the Olympia is now, right? Think about, we have North Americans, 5 days worth of competition in North Americans now, 5 days. We would never have 5 days if it was just bodybuilding, right? And that exposes how many more people to the sport, the lifestyle in general. You never have to compete, but you might be so into this that you live that lifestyle and you eat that way and you enjoy the shows and you support it and your friends are competing. Like, the whole sport has grown because of these divisions. It brings people in that normally would look at the open class and say, wow, it's disgusting. It's too big. It's this, it's that. Well, once you get into physique and you start training like that and you get into competition, you appreciate what those guys look like and all the work that went into it and all the hard, the hard times and the skipping, going out and partying with your friends and going to bed early in the mornings when it's dark and cold out, you're doing cardio. As a physique competitor, you know what they're doing. You respect that and you understand that. So if anything, I think these divisions have earned more respect for the open division. I think it's led more people to go to the open division. I think in general, it's going to feed into the open division eventually, where some of these guys, you're going to see them coming from the other ranks of divisions going into this division. So I think it's a good thing. And I think without those divisions, I think that bodybuilding would have been a dying sport.
That's a really nice point. And really good opinion on this. I totally agree on this. It's fantastic.
And we've seen it, we've lived through it for the last 5 to 10 years, how it's evolving, and the shows have just gotten bigger and bigger and more people have gotten involved. And it even opens up to the families of the people that are involved in the sport. Because if you're a competitive bodybuilder, when I started out, there was just the open class, and my parents didn't understand why I wanted to look like these guys. They didn't understand, like, why are you doing this to yourself? What, they couldn't figure it out. But at the size that I was, they could understand that I was fit and I looked good and the girls liked it and I felt confident. Like, I felt better about myself all the time. Well, the guys that are doing physique right now, their families are going to come to the show to see them. And they're going to sit in the audience and they're going to look around and see all the other people sitting just like them in the audience for their friends and family and loved ones on stage. And they're going to appreciate the whole experience. And then they think, wow, my loved one, my friend, my family, they're doing something great. Something that many of us can do. They're getting on stage, they're working hard, they're doing all these things, exercising discipline and willpower, their time management, they're learning all these things about themselves, and they're competing against all these other people that are doing it too. This is crazy. This is insane. This is so awesome that I'm watching this. And then they see the big guys come out in the open class and they go, whoa, if my son is doing that for physique, imagine how hard that guy's working. Because they see the other people going through it, right? Now they have appreciation. They don't think it's disgusting. They don't think it's gross. They don't think it's too big. They say, wow, I never want to look like that. But I can appreciate what it took to look like that. So the divisions are opening up the public to accept more of what bodybuilding and the open division is also with that mass that I think, again, wouldn't have been there. When before physique came along, Dave Palumbo was on like TV shows, like talk shows, and people were like, ooh, they would like make fun of him, laugh at him. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, right? Now it's like, well, oh, that guy's a bodybuilder. He's a bigger version of the person I know over here. I know what goes into that. Like, more people understand the sport now. That's because of classic and physique and bikini than ever before. And it's because those divisions have been around.
Man, I'll probably have to cut this and send it to everyone who's heading physique categories here, because
it's not for everybody. If you're a real hardcore bodybuilder that you want size and you have that old school mentality, physique's probably not for you. But, you can see a physique competitor here in America. Brandon Hendrickson's a perfect example. He just won the Olympia, right?
Yeah.
If you didn't know he was physique and you saw him in the gym, he was just hitting some double biceps, you'd be like, what a great physique. Jeremy Buendia is another one. He's retired, but if you look at him now, he's not any bigger than he was when he was competing. He's hitting these different bicep poses. You're like, what a great physique these guys have. But because they wear board shorts, they're stupid, they're this, they're that, I don't like it. Like, it's just a misunderstanding, I think, because, I do understand that a lot of these open guys want the contracts and they want the pictures in the companies. They want the opportunities, and the physique guys are getting them, because they're the ones that the public are more likely to look at and want to be like and start lifting weights, not the bigger guys. And back in the day, that wasn't the case. There was only the bodybuilders. So they got all the contracts, they get all the money, they get all the opportunities. And the physique guys came around and took it all away from all of them. So I can understand there's a little bit of jealousy. There's a little bit of people not understanding like why, what's so special about it. They don't even show their legs or this or that or whatever. Look, just because they don't show their legs doesn't mean they don't have legs. You know, like Buendia, Hendrickson, these
Yeah,
guys have
Hendrickson
great
has like
physique,
crazy legs.
great physiques, you know, head to toe, great balance, thickness. I mean, you know, they look like, Lee Labrada or Bob Paris or these guys back in the day. That's what they look like now, you know? So I think that, in general, there's a lot of different things that go into why the open doesn't really like physique. And, physique, I don't think they even think about the open. They're just so focused on what they're doing themselves. They don't even care because they look at it as a whole different thing that they're doing. And open, I think, looks at the physique as taking away from their spotlight, but it's really two different things that they're doing. But regardless, take the board shorts off and put a regular pair of shorts on them. Take the trunks off and put a regular pair in the open. You put them both in the gym, they both got great physiques, right? They're both motivating. They're both inspirational. It doesn't make any sense for people to be fighting because they do help each other out.
Yeah. And like another like good stuff about this is that everyone can compete, because not everyone has genetic potential to have so much muscle, even if he could take all the stuff in the world, train as hard as probably anyone in the world, he may not achieve that. So
right,
it's also
genetics
like,
may not allow it.
Yeah, so it's also good stuff that you have less muscular categories that probably everyone can reach that level of muscularity. So that's fantastic
I mean,
as
the
well.
first glaring example was Mark Anthony. He was the first physique Mr. Olympia, and he was a competitive bodybuilder. He was tall for his weight class, which is middleweights, and he couldn't build up his legs to where those other guys were. But he had a great physique. He wasn't technically a competitive bodybuilder, competitive in that class. But if you saw him in the gym, you're like, damn, I want to look like that guy. That guy's amazing. I wish I could look like that, And all of a sudden, when he stepped on stage with the board shorts, it allowed, it's not like he had small legs. They just couldn't get big enough to go, compete with his upper body. He walked on stage and people were like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I want to be like that, and that's where it kind of all started. Mark was the first one to put up forth a physique that was, bigger, than just somebody that was just lifting weights in the gym, not so big that it was distorted, lean, shredded, symmetrical, all these different types of things where people, when they saw him, immediately they were like, I want to look like that. Where some of the bigger guys like Dorian, there were a lot of people, if you were in bodybuilding, you like Dorian. But if you were the general public back in the day, you looked at Dorian and you thought he was from another planet. Him, Ronnie Coleman, you're like, how can a human being look like that? Whereas like the physique guys, people look at them and they go, that's a really good look. It gets a lot of attention as far as the contracts, the opportunities. It's an overall good look to where if you put regular clothes on, you go out, you don't look distorted and weird. With some of the bigger guys, they can only wear big baggy stuff because they can't find clothes that fit. So it's a little more mainstream, which I think bodybuilders again are not very happy about because they want to be mainstream, and it's just so far beyond what the mainstream is accepting of, that they just don't accept that, but they accept the physique guys. So I understand that there's some back and forth with it, but the bottom line, everybody's in the NPC, everybody's in the IFBB, everybody's together. They're competing in different divisions. They're not competing for the same titles. I think everybody should get along and help one another out. And I think that it's in the future, it's going to be a lot more friendly, I think, than it is now.
Actually what I was surprised at this year's Olympia was like, there was like Rami, and he was like, I have the biggest, best physique in the world. Then Chris Bumstead came and he said like, I have the, I think, prettiest physique in the world. And some people from the different categories were there, and it was like really interesting. And it was like connecting the sport together, like all these categories. Right. I really liked that. That was amazing.
Right. And I do believe, we still have, whoever wins the Open Olympia is Mr. Olympia, right? If you win the 212 Olympia, you're the 212 Olympia champion, not Mr. Olympia. If you win the physique, you're the Olympia physique champion, not Mr. Olympia, right? So that title still goes to the open bodybuilder, right? And I've heard some of these guys call themselves Mr. Olympia, or fans call physique Mr. Olympia and stuff. But like, I remember Jeremy Buendia, they were on stage at the press conference one day, and it was a few years ago. We were actually there in Vegas, and Bob Ciccarillo asks him, if someone asks you who Mr. Olympia is, what do you say? And Jeremy took the microphone. He looks over at Phil Heath. He says, Phil Heath is Mr. Olympia. Even though Jeremy was a 4-time Olympia physique champion, he goes, Phil Heath is Mr. Olympia. right? He left it at that. And I thought it was awesome because he was showing respect to the sport, right? Bodybuilding is a sport. Now, whether you're a physique or whatever, you're still bodybuilding. You're still building your physique. You're building your body. But he showed respect to the lineage and the title by saying the open is, and that's why we have these other divisions we call them, like the 212 champion, et cetera, stuff like that. So I think that, over time, people just need to realize that, things can never stay the same. If they do, they die, right? You have to keep moving. You have to keep evolving. You have to keep improving. And the only way to do that is to sometimes create these new divisions like this. Without them, again, like I said, without them, bodybuilding would be a dying sport.
Do you think like in couple of years, classic physique may have bigger prize money than Mr. Olympia Open category?
Yeah, I'm not sure because I think that, again, they're going to give that Mr. Olympia the prestige that it always has, because without it, there's no Olympia, right? That's the one that created and founded it. But you're going to see, again, you're seeing more opportunities in general for the classic physique guys now. And that comes more money. The companies that are hiring
you mean
them,
like sponsorships and
like that money, I think it's constantly increasing for the classic physique guys, and it's kind of taken away from the main division at the Mr. Olympia. But the Mr. Olympia title itself, I think, is always going to be the top one with the most amount of money, because that's the one that holds it all together. If they took the Mr. Olympia away and had all the other divisions, it wouldn't be the Olympia anymore. They'd have to call it something else. So they have to have that one as being the top. So I don't know if that one would ever, I don't think they would ever have classic more payday than the major Olympia, but they're all going to be going up, and I think that the classic will go up faster than the other one, but I don't think they'll actually put it above it. I think that they'll wind up keeping that one like where it's at, just to keep the prestige, because you have to keep the prestige. Like the Arnold now, with all these amateur Arnolds that they put on, they have all these different events, right? Well, they have amateur Olympias, right? But you don't see the Mr. Olympia being won in Korea, the Korean Mr. Olympia, because there's only one Mr. Olympia, and that's the best in the world. So trying really hard to make sure that they keep that prestige as the best bodybuilder in the world. It used to be if you won the Arnold Classic, even though the Olympia, you were second place at the Olympia, the Arnold Classic pretty much meant that you were going to compete at the Olympia and you'd be competitive. So if you won the Arnold, it was so prestigious that we were like, we're looking at this guy, he might go beat the Olympia champion. You forget about every other champion at the Olympia when a person wins the Arnold, except for the Olympia champion. Well, now they have all these Arnolds, and it's like, well, I won the Arnold. Well, which one? The one here, the one there, the one in Spain, the one in Korea, the one in Europe. Which one did you win? So now when you win the Arnold, nobody's really looking at that anymore, saying you're going to compete for the Olympia. You're going to be one of the top guys. They don't say that anymore at all. This year, Nick Walker was the first time, we had Cedric McMillan win it before, and we've had Bonac win it before. Nobody was saying they were going to win the Olympia, right? When Nick Walker won, they were like, this kid could push Rami with his size, right? But it was more about Nick and not really the Arnold. So the only show that really has the prestige anymore is the Olympia. And that main Olympia title is the most prestigious in our entire sport. And I think they're probably going to try to safeguard that to make sure that nothing happens to that.
Yeah, but even like a couple of years back at the Arnold, a lot of people from the Olympia were competing at the Arnold as well, but I don't see that anymore. Like a lot of people are skipping the Arnold and they're just focusing on the Olympia.
They all want that title. It's really about the title. When you get to the Olympia, it's not about the money anymore. It's about the title. And the Arnold title used to be very important, right? That Arnold title used to be, when you won the Arnold title, it was like, even though whoever got second at the Olympia was the second best bodybuilder in the world, when you got second at the Arnold, people would be like, well, he's second best in the world because he's the Arnold. He's only got the Olympia left to win, right? That's where it was. And you win a Hummer and a Rolex watch and like, $250,000, whatever it was prestigious. And now by spreading it out all over the world, it's not as prestigious. So the Olympians are like, hey, I'm not going to go win the Arnold because there's no prestige even if I win it. But if I can take the rest of that time and train and place higher in the Olympia, that's more prestigious getting towards that Sandow statue than it would be going to the Arnold. Now, people like Dexter Jackson would say, hey, I'm going to go get a payday. Like, if I win the Arnold Classic, it's $250,000, right? And I think at one point they gave a Harley Davidson away. The guys take those things and they sell them. They sell the Hummer, they sell the watch, they sell them. It's a big payday, right? Which back then, it was different because it had the prestige and the payday. Now the payday is not the same. The prestige is not the same. So yeah, you win the Arnold, but it's like, Nick Walker won the Arnold, and it was like the next week we're like, okay, what's going on at the Olympia? It's almost like we forgot about the Arnold. You know what I mean? He's standing on stage at the Olympia and he's in 5th or 6th place or 4th place or whatever it was. and we're only focusing on the Olympia. We forgot that he won the Arnold. You know, what's funny is like he won the Tampa, and we talked about the Tampa for a longer period of time than we talked about when he won the Arnold, right? So it was almost like the Tampa had just as much prestige as the Arnold did at that point. You know, so it's just I feel like Arnold's kind of really watered it down by doing what he's done. And I understand from a business standpoint that that makes a lot of sense. And I understand that by, you know, he thinks that it will help the sport grow, you know, by giving people a chance to compete in their home countries. But the thing was, everybody came from all those countries to America to compete for that one day. And that's what made it so prestigious. Now, if it's all split up, you lose that prestige. So I think that, you know, the Arnold right now is not what it once was. It's just my personal opinion. I've been to tons of the Arnolds. I've been there for 10, 12 years straight. And I've seen it kind of decline and not be the quality that it was back in the day. And the Olympia still reigns supreme. And I think that that's an important one to keep, that it keeps our sport glued together. Because if you've competed before, you've done a local show, your goal is to get to nationals. And if your goal is to get to nationals, your goal is to turn pro. If your goal is to turn pro, it's to win a pro show. If your goal is to win a pro show, it's to be at the Olympia someday. So technically, the Olympia is always that thing that people are chasing from the time they step on stage. You know, it's to get there. It's not the Arnold. It's always the Olympia. So we'll see what the future holds. We never know. But I mean, for right now, the Olympia is still doing great. And it was better this year than last year, of course, because of restrictions and stuff. We didn't have the restrictions this year. So it was definitely better this year. And
Last year it was without people, right? I think.
Yeah, so they had no people and no expo last year. And well, they had an expo, but it had like 5 booths. They just had it just to say they had it, just so they could say we didn't skip a year, which was interesting. This year they had a full expo, but it wasn't the Olympia Expo. It was probably about 1/8 the size of it normally is. So next year they're moving it back to Las Vegas again. It'll be at Planet Hollywood, and then there's another expo center. They'll have the expo, and they'll grow it back to where it was. It'll be full force next year in Vegas. Knock on wood, and then in case any weird stuff happens, but it should be back to like what it was next year.
Yeah, currently it was in Orlando, right?
Yeah, Orlando, which is great for us because it's only like a 2-hour flight, you know, or it's like an hour and a half flight. So there's no time difference. So for my wife and I, it's great. When we go to Vegas, you know, the long flight kind of makes you wearing out. And then when you get there, the time difference kind of messes you up for a little bit. It's like 3 hours behind. So everything you're doing, like when you get to bed, it's 3 hours later than it normally is here. When you get up, it's 3 hours later. Everything is kind of thrown off. Then when you fly back home, you're all messed up for a couple of days when you get back home. But when you get to Vegas, it's just a spectacle when you get out there. Like as soon as you get off the plane, Vegas is a spectacle in general. And then when they do the Olympia there, it's even bigger spectacle because they're making it bigger because it's Vegas. It's just everything is just bigger in Vegas.
Right. Okay, I want to ask you about your current like bodybuilding and health and lifestyle balance. Like, what does your training? Sorry.
Bless you.
Thanks.
Bless you.
Okay. I want to ask. I want to ask about the training routine and the nutrition, how much you're eating, and your TRT and stuff.
Well, everything has changed dramatically, obviously, since I was competing. You know, I started to rack up some injuries towards the end of my career. And the big one was when I tore my pec. When I tore my pec, it ripped right off the bone. That was it. It was one of the scariest things that ever happened in my life. And it makes me very gun shy in the gym. Like it makes me not want to go heavy in the gym. It makes me not want to train hard. And,
Sure.
you know, of course, like, you know, you kind of get over that a little bit though, because it's been 35 years I've been training. And my workout partner at the time was Jorge Villatoro, who won his pro card at nationals last year. And he's 28 years old. So he's a lot younger than I am. His body could take a lot more. And he was my training partner, and I did all his diet for him in his training. And we did everything together in the gym. As soon as lockdowns kind of lifted, the gyms weren't open here, but he has a gym at his house. So I was driving to his house to train. And then when the gyms opened back up, we would go to the gym together. And by training with him, he trains so hard and he's a young kid. Well, I would get wrapped up in it. I would start training hard and I'd get a pull here, a pull there. My tendons would hurt. And I'm like, man, I would have to back off again. So it was like my body was telling me like you can't keep doing what you did before. Number one, you're 45 years old. Number two, you're not taking the drugs like you used to. The drugs make a difference. So you have to change it. But how do you change that when you've been doing the same thing for 30 years? Right. And then like when you value your training, saying my training is only working if I'm getting bigger and better. Right. If that is your mindset for 30 years and now all of a sudden it has to stop and you have to maintain, but you have to maintain a much smaller version of yourself. So you have to go backwards. Well, that's not really easy to do. Like that took me a while to be okay with. And of course, my split is completely different now. So I train full body routine 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. It's one set, one exercise per body part. It's like when I go in, I'll do one set of chin-ups, one set of rows, one set of dips, one set of curls, one set of push downs, one set of shoulder presses, one set of leg presses or squats, one set of calves, one set of abs, and I'm out. It takes about 35 minutes. What I've noticed is that helps me maintain, I'm right about 217, 218 pounds right now. And it helps me maintain that without messing up my joints. So I don't think somebody could get big training like this, but I mean, considering I used to walk around at 265 plus pounds, it's helping maintain that 217 without messing up my joints. But again, it's hard to get in the mindset because I want to go in there and train a whole chest workout, or I want to go in there and do whole back workout. But if I do, I get injured. Now, the way I wound up on this program was I was doing those body part splits. Like I was doing full back workouts, and I went in the gym and I did one set of pull-ups, no problem. It's just my first set, but I didn't warm my shoulders up first, which I should have. In the second set, when I went to go down on the third rep, I felt something really weird in the back of my lat. And I felt it like it was a sharp pain from my shoulder all the way down the bottom of my lat. So I just kind of let myself down and dropped off. And my wife saw me. She came over. She's like, "Are you okay?" Because she's seen me get injured before. And I said, "Something hurts in my back." I said, "It's weird because it's only my second set. And I just did one before and I was fine." So I tried to do another set and I couldn't even do a chin up. Like there was no strength in the lat. I said, "Man, I don't know what I just did." So I had to go judge a show. So I didn't train for a week, trying to let it heal. And the next morning I got up and it was bruising. So I had a slight lat tear from just doing chin ups. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of tearing things. I've torn my rotator cuff, my bicep tendon, my pec. And it's just like, you can't do the things you did when you were younger if you're not taking the drugs. You just can't train like that. I know a lot of people think like, the drugs don't really do that much. It's like the finishing touch. The drugs allow you to train harder and recover better. You can do more weight. You can do more volume. You can do things. Your body's more of a machine than it is without them. Right. So if you don't have them, you can't do that anymore. You have to adapt. So now I have to train like a fitness person instead of like a bodybuilder, which again is hard. So I do, the 4 workouts a week. I do cardio every morning. I do 30 minutes on a treadmill, or I have like the Peloton bike, which you see behind me, which surprisingly is a really good product. I do that twice a week, and I do the rest of the time on the treadmill walking for half an hour. In my diet, like I still eat clean. I just can't eat the junk. Like, first of all, I don't want to get fat. I'm 45 years old and I'm pretty much in the same shape I was in when I was 19. I was about 205 pounds when I was 19 in this condition. So I'm still maintaining a good condition as I get older. And I'm like, I don't want to get fat. I don't want to eat the junk food. I want to do the things like I don't really crave it or anything. I'll have a pizza here or a burger here, like on the weekend or something, but I pretty much keep clean all the time. Chicken and rice is like my staple. I use Metrics packets, like the actual meal replacements. I still use those, which are very old school. So I have 2 of those a day. I'll have 2 Nutrition Solutions meals a day, which is one of my sponsors. And then I'll have a chicken and rice meal if I'm still hungry after that. And that's pretty much my diet.
I just have to compliment them because I watch your stories and stuff all the time, and it looks really, really delicious.
Oh, it's good stuff. Yeah.
Like so here in Europe, having a food delivery company like that, and like the meal prepping company, it's like a dream here. It's like you never get that quality here. Yeah.
Yeah,
or at least in the Eastern Europe.
Yeah, they've done a lot in the last. I've been with them for 6 years now. I was one of the first people they signed, and I was one of their customers. I was actually getting the food when they signed me on it, and they have a rotating menu. So every week the menu is different. So it's not the same food all the time. So I might have chicken and rice this week. It might be chicken and broccoli with pasta the next week or whatever. And they do a lot of stuff with like antibiotic free range, grass fed. It's all high quality organic meats and stuff that are in them. And they do things a little bit differently. So they make food that tastes like it's from a restaurant, except it's actually really healthy for you. So it makes it really easy to stay on my diet when those are, in my refrigerator. Just take it out, heat it up, and I'm good. So like my diet is pretty much the same it's been. My training has evolved to something, 30 minutes, 4 days a week. Cardio is something I keep in there for my heart now, not really to keep clean because I'm getting older and make sure my heart is in good condition. But not being too heavy also at my age. I think being heavy is bad when you're over 40. There's not many older mass monsters around. They die young. And, it was detrimental for me to get my weight down, before I got to that age. Cause I'm like, I don't want to wind up having a heart attack because I just want to be big. What's the point, just to appease my ego. So, that's been a little bit of a change too. Of course, my wife does, she's a nurse. She works at a hospital and she does open heart surgery and does work on hearts. That's what she does. So now I'm really aware of the, strokes and heart attacks and aneurysms and things that maybe the average person wouldn't be. So trying to keep my weight down now is kind of where it's at, not trying to keep my weight up. But I actually got a role in a new movie that I don't know where it will be out. We haven't started filming yet. It's one of the Terminator movies called Skynet Rising. And I do have a part in it. And they said, we'd like to have you a little bit bigger. So I went up to about 225 pounds for it. Like I started eating again, training a little harder. And I noticed just with that little bit of weight, I couldn't breathe. Like I couldn't, when I'd walk up a flight of stairs, I was tired. I'd eat and I'd get tired, almost like it was back, when I was bodybuilding. Like my body was always tired. My body was always trying to recover. You're carrying a lot of extra weight. But at 45, it felt much different. I said, I can't be doing this. It's too much. So I came back down, and when we start to film, I'll go back up another 5 pounds just to film, my scenes, and then I'll be out with that. But, it's just a different mindset at 45 years old than it was even 5 years ago.
Sure. And what about like sleep apnea, when you talk about these issues?
Yeah, I don't have any problems. Well, I don't sleep well. I never did. Like even as a kid, I was, I wouldn't sleep well. I'd get up in the middle of the night and stuff. So here, cannabis, marijuana is legal, and I have a prescription for it. So I use cannabis before I go to bed, and I sleep like a rock. Like I when I'm out, I'm out. Like you could come literally just bang pots and pans next to my head. You could throw stuff on the floor, and I probably wouldn't wake up. And then I wake up refreshed. So I don't really have any problems with sleeping due to the fact that I use that.
And you use like THC and CBD as well, or just the THC?
I was using the CBD for a while. Interesting enough, I started with the CBD, and then I created a product called Delparol with my company GIFT Labs, which works much better than CBD for anxiety and depression. It works way better, and it's a lot cheaper. It's like $39 instead of the $125. But interesting enough, I was using the CBD for a while, and Dorian Yates, of all people, I had a conversation with him. I was in Vegas with him, and I was telling him about my sleep problem. We were just talking, and he said, "Why don't you try cannabis?" And I was like, "I don't want to smoke. It's not I'm not a smoker." He said, "Well, we're here in Vegas. It's all legal here. You can buy a pill. You can buy an edible." He's like, "You can buy all these other ways other than, you can buy a drink. Like it's like a lemonade that has it in it." He's like, "You don't have to smoke." So literally I had that conversation with him. We got done eating and stuff. And I went out to the dispensary and I bought these little gummy bears. They're like little THC gummy bears.
Yeah.
The lady told me like bite it in half. So I bit it in half. I went back to the hotel and I passed out for the first time in 15 years, where I went to sleep. And I would normally take Benadryl before I go to sleep because that would put me to sleep. I did that for like 15 years. And the
damn,
THC,
man, that's not good.
well, you wake up and you feel all messed up for like 4 hours after you wake up. Like
yeah.
it's not good, but it was the only thing that was working. And they'd give me prescription medications when I was younger, and that stuff really didn't make me feel good. Like it made me feel bad. So I went with the Benadryl for like 15 years. The first gummy that I took, I felt like I woke up, I felt like $1 million. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I went back to the dispensary and bought a whole bunch of bags, and I poured them in other bags and put them in my backpack, took them home, and realized when I got home, I said, this is probably it for me. This is probably what I need. It's a natural alternative. It doesn't cause any side effects. I should probably talk to a doctor about it because it wasn't legal here at the time. Well, since then it became legal, and I just went to the doctor and said, hey, I've been taking these edibles since, 3 years ago. And this is what's happening. This is why I take them. And the doctor was like, I think that's great. She was like, I think that's amazing. I think it's great that it helped. She goes, but why do you want a prescription? I said, well, because I've been, going to Vegas and buying them. I said, I just would love to have, you'd be able to buy them here and not have to do whatever. And she just wrote me the prescription. I got the medical card, and now I use the medical card. You can use the tincture, which you put it under your tongue. It's like a liquid you put it under your tongue. You can do a pill, like a capsule. They have like these little things. It's almost like salt that you just pour in some water. You can drink it. They have drinks. They have edibles like cookies, brownies, gummies. They have all other ways to consume it now, which we didn't have that like 15, 20 years ago here. And it's been something that, I am a big believer in cannabis and CBD.
Yeah, me as well. Well, I basically have CBD company as well, but in Slovakia it's really, really regulated. So we have to be like really careful, and you can only sell it for like collector's purposes. You can't really sell it for like, or you can't tell someone to take it like orally because you could go to jail for that. Or you could
it's like they're trying to hide the medicinal purposes of it.
Yeah, exactly. And THC, that's like completely like for like a half a gram of just dry herbs, you can get like 6 years in prison. And for more than like 5 grams, you can get like 15 to 20 years. So it's crazy.
Half a gram is like this much. It's like
yeah,
it's
exactly.
very, very little.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty steep. I mean, they're trying. I do believe that the drug companies are trying to keep THC out of the spotlight because it has so many uses. You know, they've kind of approved it first for cancer, and that's how people started using it, like in America. But you know, little by little, state by state, they're legalizing it. And some are legalizing it for non-medicinal, meaning that if you just want to get high Saturday night, you can go to the dispensary, buy some marijuana, and get high with your friends at home. You know, they just, as long as you're not out doing it. And they found that, you know, the tax money that comes with it. This is why it's legal in America now. They tax it 35%. So when you go to buy it, it is ridiculously expensive compared to what you're buying on the streets. But that tax money goes to the state, you know. So all the politicians love it. They think it's great because they're getting all this extra money. And at the same time, the people that were dealing drugs on the streets that was marijuana has disappeared because you can just go buy it at the dispensaries now. You don't even have to, you know, half the time, you know, when it's legal for recreational purposes, some people that don't smoke marijuana will go out and buy a lemonade that has THC in it and they'll drink the lemonade. Well, that person would probably buy marijuana from a drug dealer on the street because there was no other source. So now the drug dealers have kind of dried up from selling marijuana because they're selling it in dispensaries and it's legal, and the state gets all the taxes. And they haven't seen like an increase in hospitalizations. They haven't seen an increase in drunk driving or, you know, driving under the influence. They didn't see the things that they thought that would happen with marijuana legalization. So now it's like 38 states have legalized it here out of 50. So it's like, even if your state is not legal, you drive right over the border, you can buy it and bring it right back home. You know, so it's starting to be something like, and I've seen here in America, they're promoting it as marijuana laws are racist because African Americans are the ones that are primarily getting arrested selling it, right, in their communities. So now it's even a whole big thing about like, if you don't legalize it, you're racist if you don't legalize it. So there's a lot of stuff going on with cannabis here in America, but it's a natural alternative. Like I've learned so much about cannabis. Like when I was a kid, we had weed, you know, like somebody had a joint at a party and you smoke weed and you got high, whatever, ha ha ha. Well, now I learned that there are all these different strains and they have terpenes, which are medicinal, and you can mix different strains together and they cross pollinate and make indica sativa hybrids that have different effects for different ailments. And there's like, you go to the dispensary, there's all these different ailments on the wall. And your doctor will talk to you about, you have insomnia, you have anxiety, you have this, you have that. And you go in, there's certain strains of cannabis that go to those ailments. So they can pinpoint how much you take or which one you take. And then with the capsules and stuff, they can tell you how many milligrams. Whereas like before you had a joint, you didn't know what you were taking in. You were just smoking a joint.
Yeah,
Now you know how
exactly.
many milligrams to take for what ailment, what strain, what effect you're going to get. So it's become more medicinal and people are really educated on it now. And I couldn't believe that my whole life. I thought it was just like a stupid party drug that made you, you know, want to eat Cheetos and hang out with your friends. But now it's like, I understand it a lot more.
I am a big believer as well because I think it was at least 30% of the protocol that helped me cure the arthritis. So I'm big believer as well.
Yeah.
And
CBD,
surprisingly,
I've heard, works really well for arthritis. CBD is supposed to be great for it.
yeah, the THC as well.
Does it? I don't know about THC, but I've heard like, so CBD was actually invented because there was a girl, her name was Charlotte, and she had these seizures that were over and over again.
Yeah. She
And
even
they
has
created
like
the
the
first one.
strain like Charlotte's Web, I think.
Charlotte's Web, yeah. So there's actually a brand here in America called Charlotte's Web, and that was the first CBD that was made just to stop seizures. Now, there are people that I know that take seizure medications and things like that. They have a lot of harsh side effects. You know, the CBD seems to control them without any side effects. You know, so I'm seeing like these other ailments that normally would have to have harsh medications or there's no cure or no relief from, including arthritis. They start using CBD products, like a very concentrated, maybe a full spectrum isolate or something like that. And they're getting great results and not having to take medication or lowering their medication. So the side effects go down. So the CBD compounded with it gives a better effect without having the side effects. So I think there's, you know, they still going to do more research on it, but like, I mean, I really haven't seen anything negative personally in the last 5 or 6 years from CBD or THC. I've never heard one person have a negative experience with it.
Right. But like, especially on the arthritis, I think that from my research and from a couple people that have researched it, it's like the CBD helps with the inflammation and pain, but like the THC has some, I think, like signal and effect. Like it helps the body to signal where the inflammation is, and it can like cure the inflammation in the long term, I think. You know, that I
I
think
mean,
like the CBD may be some remedy for like short term, but if you
yeah,
want like a long term treatment that well, it's ideal to have all the cannabinoids, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
they have all
But
synergistic effects.
we have an endocannabinoid system that we didn't know about until 15 years ago. Like there's a system in our body that requires cannabinoids, just like a cardiovascular system, just like a vascular system. We have that system and we don't nourish it. I don't know why we didn't know about it. I mean, science just found it like 15 years ago, which means that if that's true, we have a system, the endocannabinoid system that needs to be nourished. That means we should be taking in something like CBD every day as an essential, like a multivitamin, just to nourish that system. Because the people that are getting better from anxiety are having the anxiety because their body's actually messed up from not having that system nourished. So when they give the body the CBD, it nourishes the body and those side effects go away. So I think that, I'm not going to be Mr. Conspiracy Theory, which I do believe that the government sometimes don't do what's best for, their people. But I do believe that these medications and stuff that people have been given are just kind of patching up something that's a bigger problem. The fact that we had a system in our body that we didn't even know about until 15 years ago. And scientists are just talking about it now, that needs to be nourished with things like CBD on a daily basis.
Yeah, and it's like another big topic here in Slovakia. Actually, there are these Instagram pages, and it's called, like, in translation, like in the eyes of pharmaceuticals and in the eyes of the real doctors and stuff, like sites like this. And they share all these like things that CBD is placebo, and they pick the study, but they don't mention that the study used isolate, not full spectrum, and stuff. And people share like, oh, you see, there are these influencers that are trying to make money on it, because here a lot of influencers like sell it, like really a lot of them, and they tell, oh, it's like a placebo, it doesn't do anything, and it gets like really bad rep in Slovakia. Like really, people don't believe in it, and it's like I really take care of like the quality and stuff. And even like one of my athletes, pro bodybuilder, he stands by it, like it's treated him the sleep apnea, and I'm like, are you sure? Like, didn't you lose some weight? And it's like, no, I have it for 5 years, and I've been like at 110 kilos, 130, and the apnea was still there. And since I use your CBD, it isn't there. And I get like references like different autoimmune diseases, and I'm like, it has to do something, right? If these people come to me, uh even today, like I send this guy like a cooling gel, which you apply on like shoulders or knees, and it has like 50 milligrams of CBD and like menthol and these other herb essences. And he was like, man, I'm shocked, it's 3 days and the pain is gone. And I've been trying these creams from Thailand and this and this, and even like this prescription cream, which was like corticosteroids, didn't help as well. And the CBD helped in 3 days. And I'm like, come on, people. It
It's
can't be
real. It's
placebo.
100%
It
real.
has to
No,
do
it's
something.
100% real. We've used so we have a few companies. We have a lot of companies here that produce it now. But like you said, it's like a roll-on. Like you're talking about cream. We have creams. We have roll-ons. There was one that had some inflammation in my tendons, which I normally get like through here. And I would just take it and roll it on before my workout, and it never happened again. Literally never happened again. Now I've changed my training, but like my wife was actually having some problem with the tendon in her tricep, and she rubbed it on there, and again, like within 2 days, it was totally fine. So like we've seen that and again, I've been around for 35 years doing this stuff. I've never seen anything work. You can put those cooling gels like Flexol 454 or Bengay or something on there. They don't heal it. They just help it, the symptom of it. They relieve the pain or whatever you're feeling because it numbs it. These things seem to actually heal like what's going on when you use it, like not long term, but it's consistently.
Yeah, exactly. And like one of the things I even filmed in the documentary is that I cured the arthritis, but some of the inflamed tissue stayed, like in the ankle and stuff. And the doctors told me like that'll never go back. It's permanent. And the CBD gel in 2 weeks gone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy how well it works. It wasn't sold legally here at first. It was kind of like, it was like underground. Like I went to the nutrition store and I was telling the guy I was having problems with the tendon in my shoulder at the time. He reaches underneath the thing and he pulls it up and it's like a little eyedropper bottle. He said, you should try this. And I was like, what is this? It's like a CBD. It's hemp, hemp oil or whatever. And I was like, oh man, is that like weed? You know, I didn't know I wasn't doing THC. He's like, no, 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 it's not like weed. He tried to explain it to me. I was like, okay, well, if you think it'll work. So I took it. I put it under my tongue. My shoulder felt better. So I was like, okay, whatever. But my wife also noticed that I didn't have the anxiety normally yet. We didn't know it did that. So the longer I was on it, I went to Australia. It was like an 18-hour flight to Dubai. I think another 12 hours to Australia. And I started to get anxious in the air. And I literally took it out of my bag. I put it under my tongue and it went right away. I was like, man, this is crazy. I have natural anxiety. Like I was born with anxiety. I was medicated when I was younger, but the CBD worked almost instantly on it. I said, this is crazy because there's no side effects. You don't feel high from it. You don't feel anything. All of a sudden you just feel calm, if that makes any sense. And
Yeah,
that's when I really started going, man, you know, I took it. My mother takes it. My uncle takes it. He's like, for his knees, he's in his 70s. My wife takes it. She takes it to sleep. I mean, there's so many people around me that I know use it now that probably never would have touched it 10 years ago because they didn't understand what it is. People are understanding it now. You know what I mean? And now there's so many companies that produce it. You know, they were selling it at dispensaries before where you couldn't get it unless you had a card. You know, you had to have a license to get CBD. And now you can buy it at like supermarkets. Like it's that prevalent now.
right. It's getting it made a long way, and I hope Europe will get it as well, especially the THC and stuff, because it has like, and you know what actually pissed me off? I actually know this old man, and he was diagnosed with cancer. I actually don't know how to say the part in English. I'll probably Google it really fast. Uh, but he actually got cancer, and he got from it, but got it again. Oh, esophagus.
Esophageal cancer. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually had that cancer, and he made it, but got it again. And he weighed like around 40 kilos. So he's only just like skin and bones, and wasn't able to get another chemotherapy, wasn't able
Mhm.
to, he'd probably die if he would have it. And he got the tetrahydrocannabidiolic acid, not the THC, but the acid, which basically isn't decarboxylized, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have any psychoactive effects whatsoever, and has like really, really strong anti-cancer benefits. Actually, some studies show that it has more anti-cancer benefits than THC, decarboxylized, the psychoactive one.
Yeah.
And you know what? In month, he actually used CBD as well with it, because CBD is pretty anti-cancer as well in high dosages. And in month, cancer totally gone.
I have a client. She actually had breast cancer, and that's what they prescribed her. She's been on THC. The cancer's gone. So they give her, it's like an oil. It's like an infused olive oil, I think they give her. She just puts on her salad like every afternoon with her, her lunch. She eats that, and it's not only made it disappear, but it's kept it away. And that is insane because, I had my father died of cancer. My mom is dying of cancer right now. My grandmother died of cancer. I've had a lot of people around me die of cancer, and they were never given the treatment like that. It was always chemotherapy, radiation, these harsh drugs. And here we are, my friend Inez, she has, breast cancer, and they gave her what would be considered like an alternative treatment, and it worked, and there was no side effects, and she's not ill, and she's fine. I'm looking at this going, I think the THC and the CBD and the things we're talking about should probably be the first thing that they use before they use the harsh things. Try these things first, see if there's any effect. If it works, continue. If not, then you can move on to something a little more harsh. But here in America, it's not really talked about a whole lot with this stuff, but some of the doctors are getting very, very progressive with the alternative treatments like that, which it's great to see.
Yeah, it's really good to see. I mean, like, you have even clinics with it, right, in America that specialize on cannabis.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that the doctor they go to specializes in cannabis. So what you do is when I walked in there, I didn't know what to expect. She said, "Well, why are you using it?" I said, "I don't use it during the day because, for me, when I go out and if people recognize me and stuff, I'd like to have conversations with them. Like, oh, you're the YouTube guy, or oh, hey Jerry, I like going to the mall with my wife and people stop me and we talk. They'll come up to me while I'm having dinner. I don't want to be high trying to talk to these people. You know what I mean? I want to know what I'm saying. I want to have a conversation like we're having, and then leave that conversation knowing that, hey, I just had a great conversation with somebody. That was awesome. So I only use it before bed because it makes me goofy. It makes me a little weird, right? So I'll take it like about maybe an hour before I go to bed, and it starts kicking in. I do feel high, but very quickly I get tired. And when I get tired, I just lay down and I'm out. Like I go to sleep. So for me, it's not something that I could use all day long every day. It's not like I do know people that use it for anxiety and stuff like that. I don't need it because what I take at night, it carries over through the next of the day. And with Delpro, I don't need it.
Oh,
The
but you actually
Delpro,
use edibles, right?
what's that?
You use edibles, right?
So it depends on what my doctors have me use at the time. So sometimes it's edibles, sometimes it have to be a faster effect. So the edibles take like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to kick in. And if you've
Yeah, and
had
they
any
can
food
last
with
like
them,
16 hours, 12 to
yeah.
16 hours, right?
Well, it can last a long time. Yeah, I can wake up sometimes with the edibles if I've taken too much, and I still feel the effects from it. And I'll be like, man, I gotta go back to sleep for a little bit. But also they have these vape cartridges. I don't know if you guys have those. It's like a little
Yeah,
cartridge.
yeah,
Those here, which that is almost like an instantaneous. Within a minute or two, you get the effect.
yeah.
So
Fastest
like when I
effect.
travel, I can't. So when I travel, I can't go to like a competition and be up early in the morning and judge a competition at 7 a.m. if I have an edible. So like when I travel, I take that vape pen thing with me. So when I'm done with my day and I'm done with all my clients and stuff, before I get in the shower, I take a couple hits off the vape pen, and then I get in the shower. And then when I get out, I'm good and I go to sleep. It's a faster effect. It also wears off faster though.
Yeah,
Within
it
3 or
wears
4
off
hours,
in
it wears
like
off.
2 or 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, so about 2 or 3 hours it wears off, and I'm asleep by then anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so the vape cartridges are kind of popular here too. Um, the
Actually,
flower
but
itself.
you actually have to find some quality ones because a lot of these manufacturers, they use a lot of chemistry like glycerin and stuff that really you shouldn't inhale.
First of all, if you're going to buy it, it can only be produced in your state, which means they can't produce it in California and ship it here. Nothing goes across state lines. So it
Okay.
means everything has to be grown here, has to be processed here, and then has to go through a standard before it gets into the pharmacy the dispensary, excuse me. Once it gets to the dispensary, it's a pharmaceutical grade quality. So if you're buying it on the streets, who knows what you're getting? But here, because we have the dispensaries, it's all pharmaceutical grade. So, when you walk in there, you're getting the things that are regulated by the government, as opposed to like you said, the glycerin or whatever else they put in the other things. But we do have a black market here too, because like one cartridge would be like $75. Whereas if you go buy the ones on the underground, they're like $30, right? But again, like if you take a one hit of the one from the pharmaceutical one, you feel it with one hit. You have to take 5 or 6 hits of the other one to feel it. So it's not the same quality. So that means what else is in there? You know what I mean? So
I know some
I can
guys
steer
use
clear of the other
MCT
stuff.
oil.
I mean, there's been things where they've tested them. There's been all kinds of crap in them. Bad things that you shouldn't inhale in them, different kind of oils and stuff. We have different things like rosin here, like live rosin, like concentrates like keef. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like a powder.
Yeah,
Keef or
yeah.
hash. They pretty much
But
have every
actually,
option.
rosin is stronger than keef.
Yeah. So the rosin like you can get in the pen. The keef is something you would like add to you would add that to flour. So like if you had some actual marijuana cannabis, you would add a
Yeah.
little bit of keef to it and it would kind of basically spike that to give it more of an effect. But what's interesting with the keef and the flower is you can use a flower, which is the actual marijuana flower itself. So you get indica would be what I would use because it's for sleep. And you can get like a 30% THC version of that, right? And then you can have a certain strain with certain terpenes with that. And what you can do is get another strain of the keef. So let's say you had headaches, and that's what you're using this for. Insomnia was the keef, and you can actually combine it together like that and combine those two together. So you have now for headaches and for insomnia, like both. So they're teaching you how to combine different things if you have multiple ailments rather than trying to just take one for one ailment. They're combining them for all the different ailments. And I find it super fascinating because that's what we do with steroids, right? We take testosterone, DECA, Anavar, we start stacking all things together to create a synergy. This is exactly the same, which is, I find that fascinating.
Yeah, really fascinating because I myself research with this as well. And I try to combine multiple cannabinoids, and there are some new ones like CBN. CBN is great for sleep. It's basically oxidated THC.
Okay.
And it's fantastic for sleep. I think maybe in like high dosages, even stronger than THC.
Oh, wow. It's also like, I'm learning about the different strains and stuff we have too here. So like different states have different strains because they crossbreed and cross pollinate the plants.
Yeah.
So, I may do for like 3 days, I may do one strain, and then I may switch strains to another strain that has the same effect for sleep. So my body doesn't get used to one strain because you build up a tolerance to it like anything else. So by switching the strains consistently, you don't build up a tolerance. It's the same thing like rotating steroids. Like again, I'm applying everything I learned with steroids to cannabis, and I'm like, this is exactly the same. Like the body works the same with both of these systems like that. And it's not just fascinating. It's like every day I'm finding out a new thing about cannabis. Like it's good for this, it's good for that, it's good for this. And I'm like, you know, it's good for so many things. I can't believe it's been so regulated and considered like a bad drug for so long. Like to overdose on it, you would have to smoke an entire tractor trailer full of it within 15 minutes to overdose on it.
It's
I mean,
on
it's almost impossible to
it's
overdose on, you
impossible,
know.
right?
Worst case scenario is you pass out and fall asleep for like 8 hours and wake up, you know, you might have a hangover, you might not, or you might get up in the middle of the night and eat a bag of Doritos or something. You know, like that's what happens as opposed to these other drugs. Like if you took too much of the sleep medication I was on before, too much Benadryl, I'm going to wind up in the hospital with poisoning. You know, with this stuff, it's almost impossible to overdose on. So I'm like, I don't understand what was so dangerous about it. I do see that people that are going to abuse it, like use it to party, they may go out and drive on it, or you know, try to walk down the road and fall into the road and get hit by a car. Like I see that, but I think in the majority, though, most people do it at home. They do it to relax. They do it to go to sleep. They do it to for appetite or whatever, and they're not really out running around, you know, going crazy on cannabis. And to me, I think it's probably one of the safest things out there.
And probably if someone is experienced with it, that he does it regularly, I think he even doesn't have problems to like handle some situations that.
Yeah, I have friends that are high all the time, and I have no idea they're high. I don't even know. You know?
Right. Well, what I wanted to ask you is, have like, let's put the example, 30 milligrams of THC, and you inhale it in pen, and then you can get like 10 milligrams in bong, and it hits totally different. That sometimes it's even changing the methods of applications. It gets you completely different experience.
Yep. So what I did was there's a strain that's good for me. It's called Girl Scout cookies. That's one of the strains. And we have something here called District Cookies because we live in the District of Columbia, or now the District of Columbia. So it's like their version. And they have a vape pen, they have the flower, they have the keef, and they have a hash, all the same strain. I said, well, let me see. And I did exactly that, right? I took they had a pill. I took the pill that had one effect. The vape pen had a different effect. And I actually do have a bong, like a water pipe, that had a different effect, even though it was the same exact strain. So it was interesting how, you know, like if you're taking a hit of the flower, a certain percentage of that is THC. So let's say it was 29%, but that cartridge that you have of the same strain is 90% because it's a concentrate. So it hits you in a different way. And then the ones that you digest, when you take a pill, there's more of those receptors in your stomach that it gets to faster. And that's why it hits even harder in your stomach. So you're right. There's a different, you know, I think there are some people that maybe the vape pen doesn't work well for. They would have to use the flower. There's some people maybe the flower doesn't work well for. They'd have to use the edible. I think that, again, it needs to be tailored to the individual, but you're absolutely correct. There's different effects from the same strains depending on how you administer it.
Yeah. And also, like, sometimes it isn't about the sativa and indica. Like, sometimes it's only about the terpenes. Like, indicas can get you more energy than sativa sometimes. And sativa can sometimes totally kill you. Like, you just want to, you know, lay in bed and don't do anything.
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, again, I think that everybody's body chemistry is different too. I know certain strains work good for this person, that person, and I don't like them. You know, like a friend of mine, like this one, he was like, "This is a really good strain. It helps me sleep." I took it and I couldn't sleep. I mean, it didn't wire me up, but I just like would lay there and I was like, "This is weird. I can't sleep. I can't get comfortable." Like, you know, I did feel the effects psychoactively, but it didn't have the same effects, even though it had something different on him. So I think it's interesting that, you know, even my doctor was like, "Why don't you try this and try that and tell me how you feel?" And I was like, "Well, what's it going to do?" She's like, "We don't really know. You know, like your body's going to react how to these different strains." She goes, "It's not going to be a bad reaction, but one may feel like you're sleeping better than the other." Interesting. Okay, cool. So now, yeah, everybody's body chemistry is different. And again, this is something that I'd say, you know, I started dealing with it with Dorian in 2016 when I was in Vegas, and here's 2021. I'm still learning stuff about it every day.
Yeah, I actually met Dorian in 2018. It was Evelsprack Pro, and he was there at the expo, and we talked a little about the cannabis, and he was like, "If I didn't have to go to plane to Arnold Classic, I would hit the joint with you." We made fun, and he was like really cool guy, amazing.
Yeah, I like him. He's a good dude. He was my idol growing up. You know, getting to spend time with him for a weekend was pretty awesome. We were there for something called Super League, which was at the time, I don't know, you know, if it's still going on, but it was a sport based on his training, the blood.
Yeah, I remember it, and I think Aaron Reed was there, and some. Yeah.
Heels was there, and a lot of big guys I didn't really know who they were from the strength sports were there, and it went off without a hitch. Rich Piana was the last time I saw Rich. He was there. Kai Green was there. It was great. It was an amazing weekend. And then it was just that one weekend, and then it never happened again. So I'm not really sure what went on with it, but it was great to be around all those guys, and especially Dorian. Like, I never really knew him. Like, I'd met him a couple times, but after we talked the first time, he came on my podcast. I had him on my podcast. Up to that point, he hadn't done anybody's podcast except for one called London Real in years. And he had talked to the guy that was running the thing, and he said, I'd like to do Jerry's podcast. And I was like, wow. I said, okay. Like, we put out two different, I think it was two different, one podcast that was basically all about Super League, and one that was kind of about him. So we did two separate ones. And man, I'll tell you what, like, just talking to him, I was like, this is amazing that I'm getting to Skype with him, And then when I got to Vegas and he's like, Jerry, and I was like, wow, I can't believe he just said my name. It was like, you're in shock, but then really quickly you're like, wow, he's just like a cool guy. He's just a normal guy. Like, yeah, it's Dorian, And I remember saying to him, like, bro, you're so tan. Like, I just remember you being so pale. And he said, well, I lived in a basement for like 15 years because I was underground living in a dungeon. He goes, now I live in Spain out in the sun. I'm riding my bike. He's like, I'm out in nature now, which is, it's a lot different. He goes, I lived like in a bodybuilding dungeon for, 15 years. So of course I was pale, and we kind of laughed at it. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy right now. You know what I mean? It was that special. And I'm sure it didn't mean anything to him because he doesn't he meets a million people all the time, but taking the time to talk to me about that. And he actually gave me some insight that helped me with the cannabis thing that improved my life dramatically. That was, it was unbelievable that I actually get to have that experience with him.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear your experience. And I would like to know about the hormonal side. Some hormone replacement therapy you're actually on currently.
Yeah. So Titan, who I've been with for, it's been 5 or 6 years now, and my wife actually goes to them too. I decided when I was done competing, like, there's no point of taking everything anymore. Like, I don't want to be one of those guys that just like loads up on gear and walks around looking big in a shirt so you can try to impress people. Like, I just didn't care. I get to the point where I was like, I need to come down. I need to get off this stuff. Knock on wood, I was lucky enough to get away with my health. Unlike, some other people that push the drugs. I never pushed them to the point where it was dangerous. I mean, yeah, it was definitely over the edge sometimes, but it was never dangerous to that point where some of the things I've seen on the internet, and I was just like, I would never do some of the things that these guys say. But it was time to just stop. And I was like, I didn't know what to expect. So I just figured I'll stop. And what's going to happen is I've been trained for 30 years. I lose a couple pounds, and Rich Piano was telling me, oh, you don't lose that much. Well, Rich was a freak of nature. So when he stops taking them, he doesn't really lose weight. Me, I came down like quick. I was coming down from like 250 down to like 205. I mean, it was fast. And I said, man, it was like 12 weeks. My body was changing dramatically. I was getting fatter. I was getting smaller. I was like, this is crazy. So I let it go for a good bit. I mean, it was a good while. And I got my testosterone checked at Titan, and it was 70. Now it should be 200 to 800. At the time, it was 300 to 900. They've changed it to 200 to 900. It was 70.
It's crazy how we have totally different ranges. Like, I don't know in which units you measure it, but here in Slovakia, like, good testosterone is from like 15 to 28.
Okay, so I'm talking about overall. You're probably talking about free testosterone.
No, I'm talking about total testosterone.
Oh, total testosterone. Okay,
free testosterone is like from like 2 or 3 to to like 7 or 8.
Oh, okay.
Or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
just a different measurement. So they, it should be, me, I feel good when my testosterone's like 1200. Like, that's where I feel good. So I didn't know that. I had no idea, but I felt awful. Like, I felt like my body wasn't recovering. I wasn't sleeping well. I was moody. Like, I didn't feel good. I felt like I was just like, my body was just like breaking down. Like, I felt ill all the time. And Titan went through all the blood work. They sent me the testosterone, HCG, and Arimidex. And I was on probably 3 days after the shot, and I felt 100% better. Literally, it was like I took the shot every day after I took the shot. I was feeling better and better and better. I'm like, man, I didn't realize how bad I had beat up my body taking those drugs for so long.
Propionate, testosterone propionate.
It was cypionate. Yeah, it was 190 cypionate, 10 propionate. I don't know why it's that blend, but that's the blend that the doctor gave me. And they give you the HCG so that your body continues working with that. And they give you the Arimidex. It was like 1 pill every 3 days or something like that. It wasn't many pills per month that you got. And that's to stop the aromatization of the drugs, which I didn't need because my body's aromatized. I can take large amounts of androgens and I don't get the aromatization effects. So I stopped taking the Arimidex, continue with the testosterone. And And I use that milligrams testosterone now. I use about 200, it is 210 a week right now. It's 200 isopionate and 10 propionate in the mix. And that's what I've been using for quite a while now. And it helps maintain, where I'm at. I do think that if I came off of that, I'd probably shrink up even more and I'd feel worse. But that's where, interesting enough, like when I started taking steroids, I was 173 pounds at 20 years old. And I took 250 milligrams of, back then it was called Omnidren from Sweden, I believe it was. And I took one a week for 4 weeks. And then the next 2 weeks, I took one Omnidren and one Primatest Depot. So I went up to 500 milligrams for 2 weeks. And then I came back down for the next 4 weeks. So it was 10 weeks total to 250 milligrams of Omnidren. I put on 60 pounds. I went up to 230 pounds in 10 weeks. So that was when I was 20 years old. So that was meaning I didn't really need a lot of drugs, especially at that time. For some reason, my body soaked it up and it worked well. So taking 1 cc is almost like putting me back down there. I'm 217 right now. If I start eating, I'm back to 230 like that. If I train hard and start eating. So it's like, for me, a little bit goes a long way. I don't need a whole lot to maintain what I'm maintaining now. And there are times where I thought about like, what would happen if I went back on heavy dosages? Like sometimes it goes through your head. What if I just did one more run? Right? I wanted to try bodybuilding one more time. And I start realizing like, first of all, you got so many torn body parts, it's not going to work. Right. Second of all, if you start pushing that stuff, what happens. I mean, one of your closest friends, Rich Piana, it happened to him. You know what I mean? Like that's where you're headed if you do this. So, Rich Piana is really like a reality check for me consistently to be like, you don't need to go do that. It's not going to help your business. It's not going to help your relationships. It's not going to help your friendships. All it's going to do is appease your ego, which why do you even care anymore? You know what I mean? Nobody cares if you're 250 pounds anymore. Literally nobody gives a shit. They don't treat me any differently. They don't say anything. A lot of times if somebody now sees a picture of me back then, they're like, wow, you were big, but it doesn't affect me anymore. So I'm like, why would I want to do that? And I think what happens is you just get so ingrained in the lifestyle, training hard, eating, growing. It's a great feeling to get bigger. It's a great feeling to get stronger. It's a great feeling to grow. It's a great feeling to look in the mirror and know that I'm getting better every day. And now it's just trying to maintain because you're getting older. So you go through this mental process of trying to make sure that you don't take more, you don't get bigger. And it's a lot different than the way it was before. But for now, I just do my TRT, which is testosterone replacement. And, I don't take anything like growth hormone or anything like thyroid or anything like that, or insulin or anything like that. And I'm able to maintain my weight and feel healthy and feel good and go about my way.
Yeah. And it's like, I think it's healthier for you to take the TRT than not to take it, because I think that your natural testosterone would never probably fully cover.
No, and it's just as bad to have it too low as it is to have it too high.
Yeah, exactly.
So balance
like you
is
can
the key,
get cardiovascular diseases and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
so
like here in Europe, it's like, I don't know when they will change it, but doctors won't prescribe it testosterone whatsoever.
Yeah.
Even if you have a low T, they're gonna try to put you on some testosterone boosters and stuff, and try to tell you to, do some stuff, but they won't prescribe testosterone. I don't know why. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for a while in America, it wasn't a big thing, but it turned out to be like these longevity clinics and stuff they open here were prescribing it and people are getting good results. And I think that, like anything else, I think that it takes time for them to do the studies and time for them to accept the new medicine and the new information, data and stuff for them to say, okay, I think we can give this a try safely. But at this point, in 2021, their data is out there. It's important to have a balanced testosterone in your body. There's TRT and there's an HRT. HRT is a little bit different. HRT is hormone replacement therapy. So that means you're replacing more than one hormone. So that would be like testosterone, HCG, and Arimidex. That would be hormone replacement, right? Now, let's say you had your thyroid test and that was low. They might give you something like Synthroid. That's another hormone you're replacing, right? Let's say, you have HGH because your levels are too low, right? They could give you that. So now it's hormone replacement therapy. And it's not just TRT, which I'm very skeptical of that. Unless I needed it, I wouldn't take it. Like I would have to have all my levels messed up and the doctor say, hey, you need this. I mean, a lot of people take it anyways because they're like, oh, I just take it, because it makes me feel good. And I'm like, I feel good without it. So until I need it, I don't really play with it.
And have you tried some of these healing peptides like BPC-157 and
when I tore my pec? So Titan Medical, the place that I work with, they actually can prescribe that for you from a pharmaceutical from the pharmacy. And as soon as I tore my pec, I hit them up. I was like, look, I tore my pec. I need the BPC and the TB500. And I healed so fast that the doctors didn't even understand what was going on because you couldn't talk to them about it. They didn't understand what it was. You know what I mean? So my doctor knew, but the one where I tore my pec, he was like, I can't believe you're healing this fast. Like it was literally, instead of 6 months, it was like 3 weeks that I had healed from the BPC. And what was interesting enough also was my tattoos were healing like crazy too. I would get tattooed and it should take 2 weeks to heal. Within 3 days, they were healed. My tattoo artist couldn't believe how fast my body was healing on that stuff. He was like, this is incredible. Like, never seen anything like it. But the problem is, I was using that stuff to heal from my pec, and it helps the muscles heal and it helps the joints heal and everything, but it doesn't really strengthen them. So it heals them. So what happened was I was like, when I had my first pull in my lat was when I came back from my pec tear, I was healed, but my muscles didn't have the same strength they did. But I felt so good and so strong from the BPC because I was all rested and my body was healed, but the strength wasn't there yet. So when you're using those things, they can heal you and you'll recover faster, but they don't make you stronger like the steroids. I wasn't on steroids at the time, right? So my body was still training natural with the BPC. I'm sure if somebody was on steroids and their muscles had that type of strength and recovery with the steroids, that the BPC would be like throwing rocket fuel on there and you'd be able to heal and grow even faster.
Yeah. And even like you can take lower dosages and have it like prevention from any injuries.
Yeah, for me, I don't like doing shots anymore. Like I did so many shots when I was younger. I mean, multiple shots a day or sometimes. I hate taking the damn shots now. So to take something every day in a shot, I don't take it. Like I could take BPC every day, but I would just like look at the needle and be like, I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow. And it's been like 5 days since I took it. Like I have another Titan therapy in my refrigerator. It's called Nectar of the Gods. It has glutathione in it and B and C in it.
Oh yeah, I have seen it.
Amazing product, right?
Yeah.
But there are days where I get up and I'm just like, I just don't want to do a shot. Like I don't want to do a shot. So I'll skip it that day. It's a weird mindset,
Like I was against shots because I had to take my medicine prescription and I had to inject it, and I was like, oh, injection again. I don't want to do injections. But right now, when I don't take any medications prescribed, and I have all my stuff that is for like research purposes, because you can't get BPC and this stuff prescribed here. It kind of like is exciting to me now. And I don't have problems taking a lot of shots a day,
It used to be like that, but
actually I want to mention the BPC. I had this cracking in my knees from like the osteoporosis for years, and I tried like Boswellia serrata, which is great herb for that. Every type of collagen, even like the patented ones for especially the knees. And I tried like huge dosages of MSM, like not the capsule one, but like the powder, and like 10 grams or more a day. And I tried glucosamine and everything in synergy, like at one time, and nothing helped. But like the BPC in like 3 weeks of injecting in both knees every day, and the cracking was gone in like 3 weeks. And I couldn't get rid of it since I was 7 years old,
It's crazy. Yeah, the stuff is definitely, I mean, again, it's so new that, they don't really know every application for you. And we're only using it for bodybuilding purposes now. You know what I mean? Like when I tore my pec, I was like, I had to get on this stuff right away. I was injecting it directly into the tendon too. There's a spot injection effect where you put it too. It's systemic, but if you put it directly in where you're tearing,
the BPC is systemic and the TB is
Yeah, but together I healed so fast the doctors didn't even understand. They were just like, "This is crazy," and I'm like, "Well, I eat my protein, I drink my water, I take my supplements." They're like, "Wow," I'm like, "Yeah," but they had never seen anybody heal that fast, and I knew. I was like, "This is the BPC," because other people have taken it that I know, and it worked really well.
I actually mentioned this in the documentary, and it was like the night after we filmed it, and I went to sleep, and I was like in bed, like thinking, the BPC and the TB500 is here for like at least 7 years, right?
Yeah.
And like, why it's okay in America, Titan Medical, you can get a prescription, but here in these countries, it's only for research purposes, and everyone has to put like huge sign on it that it isn't intended for human consumption, So why it has to be like this one? It has so much positive benefits with for now, no side effects. And then you have this vaccine that can get
Right.
approved in less than a year, right?
It makes no sense. I mean, here it's not legal. You can't buy it. You can't get it at every doctor. Titan Medical does a lot of longevity and hormone replacement. And with that, and I didn't understand this, but a friend of mine who was going to another doctor said he was planning on being able to prescribe growth hormone soon. He said, well, that's great. He goes, why all of a sudden? He said, because the insurance money I have to pay to be able to prescribe it is crazy. He goes, but now there's enough people that want it that I can justify paying the insurance. So there's a lot of doctors here that don't want to pay the insurance to something like that because it's being used for off-label use. Growth hormone would specifically be for people that want to grow taller. He was giving it to them, supplementing their low growth hormone levels. So that's another thing too. It's more of a liability for the companies that can't afford the insurance for it in case something goes wrong, that they don't want to sell it. That's why it's only certain clinics you can get a prescription here. Otherwise, you can get it online here, not for human consumption, research purposes only, et cetera. It's the same way here, but there are longevity clinics like Titan that do prescribe it.
And that's like the system here. It totally pisses me off because all the time, all these 16 years I was going to the doctor, they were telling me like, you have to take these corticoids. I took them for 16 years without any break, nonstop, which I'm surprised that I still have bones, right? And functional organs. And they were telling me, oh, you have pretty bad osteoporosis. And I'm like, why don't you prescribe me growth hormone? Because I was doing my research since I was like 15 years old. They're like, growth hormone, are you crazy? It's used if you're short and you can grow taller and you can get cancer from it. We're not going to prescribe you growth hormone. Here, take this medication. And as I told you right now, if I would take the medication they prescribe me, I would get the arthritis back, because it totally fucks up your digestion, and all these autoimmune diseases are in the bowels, so digestion is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of these companies, it boils down to money. It boils down to money and how much they can make by keeping you sick and treating you for being sick rather than curing you. That's my personal opinion over the things that I've seen throughout the years. There are cures for things out there, and they're heavily, they're basically hidden. They're basically hidden from the public so that they can, we see, like, again, we were talking about cancer and THC. That was never even an option for my mother or my dad or anybody I knew, but they gave it to, my friend Inez. Well, what if that would have worked? Well, they weren't going to, if they cured him, they couldn't sell them the chemotherapy and the radiation and all the other stuff and all the bills that they'd have to come in for testing and all the other stuff that comes with it, and I'm like, I've seen it in my own two eyes. I've seen it work for one person and not be even offered to the other person. Right. And if that's something that works, and it should be universal that people know it works and be at least offered to the people, as a first, course of action. But they make so much money with these things. Like you go to the hospital here, they give you some pills, they patch you up, they send you home. Well, the problem is, what's the cause of what's happening? Can you cure the cause of what's happening? A lot of it can be cured with diet, with, changing different, maybe they're deficient in certain vitamins, minerals, nutrients. They don't even look at that stuff. They just give you a pill and send you home for the effects you're having and don't actually work on what's causing those effects in the first place. And then it just gets worse and worse. And you're taking another pill, and then you get to take another pill with that pill to help that pill, and side effects from the other pill. And there are people that I know, they're in their 70s, 80s, and they have a box full of pills they're taking. They don't even know what they're for. This one's for my blood pressure. What's that one for? My blood pressure. My blood pressure. Why do you have 4 blood pressure pills? You know what I mean? If one works, then why do you need 4 different pills? What is going on? So I have my whole, theory on the big pharma and stuff like that from things that I've seen throughout the years. Of course, my wife is a nurse. My mom's a CNA. And the things that I've been through personally with doctors that don't make any sense. And I'm that guy who always questions everything. So I'm the guy who they just try to get out of the office because I'm asking too many questions. And that makes me feel like something's up. When I'm asking a question about my health and what's going on, and you won't answer me, and you're just telling me, look, just take this pill and you'll be fine. You're not giving me the answers that I want. You're trying to rush me out the door if something's wrong,
Yeah, that's exactly like the last time I had conflict with the doctor was that she even sent me like in like post office, she sent me like to my address that I should get vaccinated and stuff. And I had like a huge conflict with her because I told her that I had COVID for 2 times already. I even
Yeah.
had the paperwork that I have the antibodies and stuff.
Yeah.
And even she told me you have to get vaccinated.
Yeah. This
And
whole
she even
vaccine thing
sent
is
it
a
like
whole
in
nother
post,
thing. Yeah. This
Crazy.
whole vaccine thing is, I do believe that, in 2020 in March, when this thing hit, I think that it was a very scary thing. I think, my wife, she works at the hospital. She saw people die from it. I believe it's real, right? It's not that I don't think it's real, but like any other virus, it runs its course, just like any other flu or any other thing. I think that the numbers we see now are very low, and it's not because of vaccination. It has nothing to do with vaccination, because most of the people being vaccinated are in the hospital right now. If you look at the numbers, the people that are having the issues right now are already vaccinated. The people that are not vaccinated are not having it. Then we had Delta that swept through, and I think that Delta was a blessing, to be totally honest with you. Delta is something that was not killing people. If you notice all the news, they didn't talk about deaths, they talk about infections,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Infections. Well, people got sick, but they got over it. Well, what that did was build up natural immunity. So between the people that already had regular COVID, people that had Delta, and the vaccinations, we have hit herd immunity all over the place. This thing is not what it was a year and a half ago. Now it's political. Now this is 100% political, and nobody can change my mind on that. I live here right outside of Washington, D.C. I see what's going on with my own 2 eyes. I have friends in other countries all over the place. Things are getting really crazy, and they don't make sense. They just don't make sense. I mean, we were just down in Orlando with thousands of people at the Olympia. Everyone's fine, right? Here, there are basically no restrictions. Everyone's fine. There's not what's going on like they say is on TV. But you go one town over into Maryland, in Montgomery County, they're still locked down. They still have all these restrictions. They're wearing masks, all this stuff. And I'm like, you guys don't even realize that outside of your town, everything is fine. You're hearing something that is not true. The numbers are not there. The hospitals are not full. People are not dying, but they are so scared still because they don't realize outside of their town that everything is wide open. Like, it's very strange. It's like they're isolated. And when you go into that town, you start looking at it and be like, how can these people be so scared? They're in their cars with 2 masks on, a face shield, driving. And I'm like, you literally drive over the border, it's wide open and nobody's got anything and nothing's happening, right? So now I start questioning what I'm seeing. Then I start asking questions. My friends in Italy, my friends in South Africa, my wife, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? Tell me what you're seeing. I don't want to listen to the news. I don't want to listen to politicians. You tell me what you're seeing with your own 2 eyes. Tell me that. And when I get that information, it doesn't match with what the politicians and the TV are saying. It just doesn't. So who am I going to trust? The people that I know that are telling me what they see in real time, and they're concerned too, because what they're seeing doesn't match up? Or am I going to be listening to the people that we know take bribes, are dirty like the politicians, that are getting paid? The news stations are getting paid by someone, right? That's how they run. They get paid. They get influenced by someone. Am I going to trust those people or the people in my life that I trust already? That's where I get my information from.
And there's like crazy, this fake news. Good thing that you mention it. I live in a capital city, and like my parents live in like a smaller city, like 160 kilometers away from me. And in TV, there's like this, I don't watch TV, but they do. And there's like this big, like this huge hospital is full of COVID patients, and they can't accept anyone, and they don't know what they will do next. I'm like, what the fuck? And I actually have a friend that works there at this hospital.
Yeah.
And I like texted her, and I'm like, what's happening? Like my parents told me this and stuff. And she's like, what? Well, like we have 5 or 6 people here with COVID. I'm like, well, how is that possible? And she's like, oh, the media. And she was explaining me that, right, that at the time, the people that were like for some orders for some surgery and stuff, like they had to take the COVID test, and they didn't took it before, so they took it in the hospital. And a lot of them got positive tests, and they didn't even knew they had some COVID.
Right.
And they had to be like hospitalized for COVID to be able to go to the surgery. And there were like these 5 beds for like people that accidentally had a positive test and they didn't knew about it. There's like only 5 beds. And these 5 beds got full. And they could like put in the news like the hospital's full, because there were only 5 beds for these patients that didn't even knew that had COVID. And they didn't even had, like symptoms, they're like weak and then went to the surgery, which is crazy.
And we have, like I said, there's people around me that work at hospitals. Like my wife works at a hospital. These hospitals regularly operate over capacity, meaning they're usually 110, 120% over before COVID even existed. They just never talked about it. It was never publicized because there's no reason to. What are they going to say? Don't come to the hospital? They have to come to the hospital if they're sick. But the news was able to take that, especially in America too. They're overflowing and they're like, yeah, but we only have 2 COVID patients. The rest of them are all heart problems, cancer problems, this problem, broke a leg, like all these other things. But, you know, especially in the summertime, people here, they start drinking around 4th of July. When they start drinking, they fall out of boats, they fall downstairs, they get alcohol poisoning, they bang their heads, like all this crazy stuff. They get in car accidents, they wind up in the hospital. So the hospital normally goes up during the summer based on, you know, the accidents. Well, in the fall, we have like stuff like flus, pneumonias, bronchitis. We have that whole season. They normally go up because of that. So if you go back and trace how those spikes were happening, it wasn't COVID spiking them. It was the things that normally spike year to year. And COVID was just kind of added onto it, you know, and they were able to publicize that. And people in America caught on very quickly because the internet allows you to share information. They caught on very quickly, shared that information. And people were taking their phones and going to the hospitals and walking in the hospitals. Where are all the people? What is going on? What are you talking about? You know, and they would get thrown out or arrested or whatever. And that stuff would hit the internet. And they're like, you guys said the hospital is full. Right now, there's nobody there. You know, they set all these pop-up COVID testing centers for a while. They shut them down because nobody was getting tested for COVID because the people weren't getting sick. People that were feeling ill, they maybe didn't have the right symptoms, so they just stayed home. They didn't get tested for COVID. You know, and I'm just sitting here going, what the hell is going on? And as I watched that happening during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, I started to see the pattern, right? The patterns were like, you know, whenever things started to seem to get better, they would push back harder and come up with something else, right? And then when that would get exposed, something else would pop up. And then Delta popped up, and this pops up, and that popped up. And now it's just get the vaccine or else. We're not even talking about numbers anymore. They're not even talking about deaths or breakthroughs or cases. They're talking about you're not going to be able to work if you don't get the vax. What are we talking about here? You know, during the pandemic, the lockdown, we had numbers on the TV that showed us how many deaths every single day. Every day the president was on TV, Trump was talking about COVID every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. Now Biden doesn't even talk about it. The numbers are gone off the TV. They're not talking about COVID anymore. They're just talking about getting the vaccine. You need this, you need this, you need this. And then you get the vaccine, you get sick and wind up in the hospital. Why did I get it in the first place? Then the people not vaccinated are not getting sick. They're not going to the hospital. Or if they do get sick, they get over it very quickly. And they're saying, well, you guys are the problem. We already have natural immunity. Well, natural immunity is not a real thing they're trying to say now. And I'm like, so you're trying to tell me the body doesn't function like it has for the last 10 billion years, right? Now, all of a sudden, our bodies don't do it anymore. Like, no, it's bullshit. And the more that you poke holes in it, the more it upsets people, I think. People get upset because they don't want to believe that the news is lying to them. They don't want to believe the politicians are lying to them. The police are lying to them. They don't want to believe this stuff because everything that they've ever known is turning out to be people trying to take advantage of them for whatever reason. I think it's got a lot to do with money. You know, these companies get paid billions and billions of dollars to produce this vaccine. And then all of a sudden it doesn't work. They go, oh, we got to produce another one. Well, here's another $10 billion to make another one. They go out there and make a third shot. Oh, this one's not working. Oh, well, now we got to make a pill. Now Pfizer and Merck are making pills. Well, here's another $5 billion to make these pills. And they keep making medications that don't work on something that, I'm going to be 100% real, this is going to be controversial. These numbers have peaked. All the numbers have peaked and dropped in every state here, even the ones that are wide open with no restrictions. There are nobody getting sick anymore from this. Very few people are getting sick from it. So why are we forcing vaccines on people when the danger is gone? If this thing was truly as dangerous as we said it was, as they say it is, we wouldn't have football games. We wouldn't have wrestling going on. We wouldn't have the Olympia going on. We wouldn't be getting on flights to go all over the country, all over the world. I mean, we were in lockdown and flights were still flying in and out of the US. I had friends that were still flying in and out all the time. They never stopped any of this stuff. So you're trying to talk to me that you shut down the entire globe and made people not work, but you're still letting people do all these different things. The NFL, the football games for college, stadiums, thousands and tens of thousands of people, 90,000 people in a stadium, and no one's getting sick right now.
Yeah.
How do you explain that? You know what I mean? Like they can't explain it, but they just keep moving forward. Vaccine. Okay, let's stop talking about vaccine. Tell me why I need it if everybody's okay. You know, like, don't get me wrong. There are people that have died from it. I understand that. But there are people that die every day from drinking too much water or sunburn or falling down a flight of stairs, or they've been scared. They saw a spider, got scared, had a heart attack and died from it. You know what I mean? There are people that die every day of things. And, you know, There's something called the flesh-eating bacteria that's out there. That stuff is the nastiest stuff on the planet. It's all around us. You get a cut and it gets in there, it will literally eat the skin off your hand. It'll eat the tissue. They have to cut the tissue to get ahead of it or you die. That's all around us, and we don't clean anything because of it. We're not out there wiping anything down. That will kill you in a matter of 2 days. If you get that stuff, it'll eat your body. Flesh-eating bacteria. And we don't even talk about it like it's not even a thing. But we're forcing these vaccines. So I'm against the vaccine. I'm not anti-vax whatsoever. I've been vaccinated for mumps, measles, etc., booster shots. I've had all that stuff in my life. I don't get the flu vaccine. Why? I don't get the flu. Knock on wood, I've had the flu once in like 10 years. So why am I going to get a flu vaccine? I take care of myself. I rest. I eat right. I've been working out for the last 30 years. I don't need it. I don't get it. You know, but now they're just trying to force it on everybody, like forcing you not to have medical care because you don't have it. You have natural antibodies. What's the difference? You know, matter of fact, you're better off with the natural antibodies than you are with the vaccine. I mean, that's just a proven fact over time. You know, I think in the end, you know, I truly believe the truth always comes out. I believe the truth is always comes out in the end. It will come out. It's coming out more and more now. But I think more people are starting to wake up to the fact that this whole thing is bullshit. And the problem is they're not understanding what they woke up to. They don't understand the system that they just woke up to. They're dealing with a system that's been trying to enslave us, and it's all about money. These politicians have been lining their pockets. These banks, the big pharma, they've all been lining their pockets off us for generations. And we start waking up going, hey, maybe cannabis would be the solution to cancer. Could you imagine if you took a cannabis pill and it went away and that cannabis pill was like $20 a month? There was no more cancer treatments. There was no more cancer institutes. There was no more of these cancer places that you donate money to, the cancer organizations, where half the money goes to their employees. They don't even put the money towards research because it's a nonprofit, although they're paying their people like $90,000 salaries a year. You know, like all those things would disappear. That entire big pharma market would disappear for cancer if we had cannabis curing it. And there's no way they're going to let that happen. It's too much money. It all boils down to money in the end.
Yeah, actually, one example I want to put out is that the FDA told like the autoimmune protocol for rheumatoid arthritis, which is actually like about food that you only eat like meat without seasoning, vegetables, fruits, and that's basically it, and sweet potatoes, nothing else. FDA stated that it's placebo, and the people that cure the arthritis, it's because they started eating healthy and they feel good, and it's just it's not permanent, you know, it's only for a while. But I have been doing like 1,000 kinds of diets. I've been doing keto, bodybuilding, competition diets, and I don't even know how many diets, and nothing cured the arthritis. So how it can be placebo, you know, how can they put this stuff out? It's crazy. It's just one example that I wanted to put out. And I want to tell you what's happening in Slovakia with the vaccines, how they're forcing it. So we have like 5.5 million people in Slovakia, and it's split like, you know, you have like these regions. And in every region you have like each percent of people that are vaccinated. And in like the region I live in, it's like over 60 or 70%. So it's a whole lot. So the gyms are open and you can eat in a restaurant and stuff. And in like the southern or like eastern regions, there's like 30 or 40%. And then they don't even have numbers to prove that the people are ill or stuff, but they close the gyms, they close the cinemas, they close the restaurants, and the people are like, why you're closing it? Why, you know, you closed this? Because the people aren't even ill and stuff. And they're like, it's your fault. You should have taken the vaccine. You should have tell other people to take the vaccine so we can all live together in peace. They're telling this. And even the government has this like lottery of a vaccine. It's like, if you get a shot of vaccine, you register a number online and you are put in like lottery where you can win over 2 million euros. Which is like so huge amount of money, 2 million euros. It's crazy amount of money.
They did it here too. It was like $2 million or something like that. They did the same thing here. And I'm like, that should make you question anything. If they're trying to give you $2 million to take this shot, right? They try to bribe people by giving out free hamburgers, free donuts, and the dumbest stuff. And I'm sitting here going, if this thing was really as dangerous as they say it is, and everybody's scared, you wouldn't have to recommend anything. Everybody would run to get this vaccine. What's interesting, even more interesting, here in America, when Donald Trump was president, people wanted the vaccine. They rushed to get it. Once Biden got in, they don't want it anymore. It's very strange how things shifted. It's like you didn't have to bribe anybody for it before, but it seems like they don't trust the Biden administration. They trusted Trump. They don't trust Biden and things that he says, because he said, we won't mandate it. And then he mandated it. Trump said, I'm not going to mandate it. Take it if you want it. And they all rushed to get it. He says, I'm going to mandate it. No, nobody wants it. It's like, it's the opposite. It's just, there's weird stuff going on. Like you said, like, oh, we're all going to live in peace. Since when does a vaccine bring peace to the world? Something very strange is going on here. And when you start to see your country, my country, all these countries doing the same thing, saying the same thing, like build back better. They keep saying build back better. Why is every country using the term build back better? Why are they pushing the vaccines? And then you only have to look for, and this is getting a little conspiracy theory out there, but you look at the Pope who's trying to create a one world religion. That's the next thing for him. He's having a meeting next week about creating a one world religion. Now, first of all, I'm Christian. There's nothing in the Bible that says that everybody needs to be Christian. What it says to go out there and preach the word of God. And if someone doesn't believe in God or follow that, you pray for them, right? But they have free will, and God gave us all free will. That's the best gift God ever gave us, and he wants us to exercise it. The goal is throughout your life to find your way back to God. This Pope, who's supposed to be the holiest of holies, is trying to create a one world religion. So now you have countries that are saying build back better, all saying the same thing. You have the Pope who wants to create one religion for the world, and you have every single country pushing a vaccine that doesn't make sense. You tell me that doesn't sound like they're all working together, like they're all on the same page. If that's the case, why all of a sudden is every country on the same page trying to do the same thing? It's all leading to the same thing. They're all trying to create this one world thing. And unfortunately, Australia, who's been hit very hard with it, their premier president, whatever you call that they have there, actually has used the words publicly, New World Order. She said it flat out on TV. We'll look at what that looks like with the New World Order. And I'm like, this is crazy stuff. This is stuff I didn't, I laughed at 6 or 7 years ago. And here we are, people not being able to make a living, people being forced to get vaccinated, one world religions, right? The same catchphrase for every single place. Build back better, the great reset. They're all talking about the same thing. I mean, that's something as citizens we should be concerned about,
Yeah. And in Germany, there was like this, I don't know if it was prime minister or stuff, but like he had like a shelf of books and all the books were like sideways, but only one book was like pointed like with the front page, and it was like the Great Reset.
Yeah. Yeah, which don't you think that's weird how it's just sitting there in the background? It's like there's a lot of strange stuff going on.
Yeah.
And you try really hard not to be a conspiracy theorist, because if you get labeled that, people think you're crazy. But what you see with your own two eyes, what you observe with your own self, you cannot just ignore that and go with what these people say, right? The whole reason that we're in this mess to begin with is that we trusted people over our own instincts this whole time. We put people in places of authority that we trusted, and we never checked on them. We let them run things here in America. We let these people be the president. We let them do, whatever it is they do. We let them do it and didn't check on them. Now all of a sudden they have pretty much unlimited power to do whatever they want. In America, it's not supposed to be like that. We're supposed to be the ones that have the power, and the politicians work for us, which means what we want done, we have them be the voice for us. Now it's the opposite. We're being forced to do things that we don't want to do based on somebody that's supposed to work for us, that's forcing themselves and their ways and their thoughts and feelings on us, which is backwards. So I don't know what the solution is. I do think that every country, we're seeing uprisings, right? And the news may be hiding it, but every country is having huge protests. We have presidents that are being arrested. Like the Brazilian president was arrested. We had Myanmar. They arrested the entire government. They locked them down as a military coup. Now they arrested the entire government for what was going on over there. Right? We have Australia, which you got the people stepping down because they're not going to be able to deal with what's happening. Like these politicians are starting to step down. I'm like, what is going on? The people are starting to rise up and they've had enough. You have clashes with people in police because the police are trying to force mask mandates. They're beating on people in the middle of the street because they're not wearing a mask. Like, this is absolute insanity. And this is all over the world. If it was just happening in America, I could say maybe our system is screwed up and that's weird, but It's not. It's happening in your country, my country, their country, everywhere, right? But the problem is the news doesn't link it all together. It takes me and you talking. It takes me and him talking, you and him talking in other countries to compare notes and say, what the hell is going on here? Like the same thing in my country is going on in your country. How is that
Yeah,
possible?
exactly.
You know,
And
like
like
it
the
doesn't
fake
make any sense.
news, they even like in our news, they like show like, oh, France has got these regulations, and they're like in the news, they're telling people like, oh, you talk about how restricted it is, but look at France. France has this, France has this, they can do this, they can do this. They are in far worse situations than us. But like you watch some other sources and you see the protests in France, you see how this got allowed because the people fought against it. And in the
Right.
news, they tell you like people accept it, people are okay, we have to fight this disease, we have to be in this together, and bullshit like this
Yeah.
in the news. And then you have some friend in France and he tells the exact opposite. And
Yeah.
that's
There was somebody
like,
in Canada that came on
yeah,
my, I've heard Canada's lockdown. Well, somebody came on my live one day and said, hey, so-and-so wants to come in. I said, I haven't talked to him in a while. So I click on it. He's playing golf out in Canada. I said, aren't you guys locked down? He said, no, it's fine. I'm like, what? He goes, no, everything's wide open here. And I'm like, is it just in your area? He goes, well, it's area to area, but our news in America makes us believe that Canada's locked down the whole country, right? And then we talk about Australia. It's only Melbourne that's locked down like that. But when we hear it, the entire country is locked down. So it makes it sound like Corona is surging and we need to fight it. And I'm just sitting there going, that's not, like in Italy, when they said they were having people were dying in their homes, they were leaving the bodies there because they had no place to put them. I had a friend in Italy that goes, hey, where that is, I live here and there's nothing going on. I had a friend in China that said that the buses that were coming in, people getting off the buses with no masks. He's like, nobody's wearing a mask on a bus here. Like, here it is. Show me a video of it. And I'm like, in here, they're telling us people are waiting for the bus, just dropping over dead because of this disease. He goes, no, there's nothing going on. So it's like, I've talked to people like yourself in other countries, and that's what we really have to do. Really talk. People need to get together, not just in America, but in the world, and realize that it's us. It's not about Republican or Democrat here in America. It's about us, the people, versus the politicians and the
yeah,
governments.
exactly.
It's all of us, right? Those governments are linked together now. They're all working together to do whatever they're doing. I don't really understand it, but they're working together now to fight against us and make us do things. We all have to fight back against them now, right? And not just as Americans, but as an entire world of people, as human beings, we need to fight them. It's us against them at this point.
Yeah, and like the part that people don't understand, they're like, oh, stupid politicians, they do this, they do this, but they don't understand that they're funded by our money.
Right.
The
Yep,
money,
that stops everything.
I think in every probably state, it isn't like the state has some money. I think every
Right.
state is in debt, especially America. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
And if these people won't give the government the money, what they can do? They can't survive. It's impossible.
Every
But they
American,
just
all they
have
have,
so much control over so many people, and so many people can't find the truth that,
it's the thing is so many people I think are scared too. They're scared to fight back. They've been indoctrinated, like we were talking about in the schools and stuff, to just follow and not really think for themselves, not fight back. They look at like the military, they fight. Me, I'm just a person. I don't fight. And I'm like, that's the way that you've been trained since birth. Like here in America, all we have to do is every person says, I'm not paying taxes anymore. Too bad. Those taxes are gone. All that money that goes into government is gone. They're not funded. Our tax dollars pay their checks. Our tax dollars fund their lifestyles. We stop paying taxes, they're done. They don't have a paycheck. So
right.
really, we do have the power, but the problem is people need to say, hey, look, what we're about to do is be very uncomfortable for a period of time. This is going to suck really bad, and it's going to be hard for a period of time, and deal with that and move forward from there and realize that they're in for a fight, and things are not going to be comfortable, and things in the end will be better. But they're not willing to do that. They don't want to give up the lives that they have now to have a better life later on. They just want to kind of deal with it. So
Yeah, and that's like that's a big thought. That's I think that this is great that we did podcasts like this, and we can give perhaps some inspiration, or not to anyone take example from this, but they can perhaps have some thought in mind and thought about it their own way and make their own decision about it.
yeah, think for themselves, open their eyes a little bit,
Yeah, so thank you, Jerry, for this podcast. I really enjoyed it, and it's pretty long podcast as well. But the time went on by really, really fast. So I don't even know that it's 4 a.m. here in
So
Slovakia.
it's 10 o'clock here now.
10 o'clock. Okay,
Yeah.
Jerry, thank you a lot. Do you have something that you want to say to the listeners?
Yeah. First of all, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope this podcast was entertaining, was fun, educational. Thank you, Mario, for putting me back on here. I appreciate it. I always have a good time when we talk about this stuff like this. And it's really insightful for me to also talk to you face to face, to get to know what's going on over in that part of the world. I wish that more people would take the time to do the stuff that we're doing right now instead of, just kind of living in their own little bubble. I think that if more people took the time to do these podcasts and reach out from other countries and stuff like that, I think we'd all be better off, to be totally honest with you. So thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll hope that I'll have you again here. So
anytime.
Yeah, so thank you, Jerry, and thank you all guys for listening to this real long podcast. And we'll be really, really happy if you will share this podcast so
of course,
it can get to the most possible amount of people, because I think that this podcast will probably be shadow banned in
I'm pretty sure
in a matter of days.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So help us to spread the information and spread these opinions that you can perhaps discuss with us as well in comments or in messages, or I don't know. Comments will be probably the best. So thank you guys again, and thank you, Jerry. It's always a blessing to have you here. So thank you a lot, and enjoy the rest of the day, guys. And thank you again. Bye.
Yeah, before we sign off, just one more thing, guys. Stay strong out there. Right, things will get better. Just hang in there.